owner of the US Mega Farmest video is Puremont para Intratnamiento Wino Infringe de Recos de Originales. Los Direcos de la Novela y la Imagen son del otro original, no reclama más propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora? Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 176 Daha and Cod fight covering his head with his hands. Kinzu couldn't bear to watch anymore. Sure enough, Daha rushed over fiercely, kicked the deck with his two hind legs, and pressed towards the lively codfish. The momentum was like a tiger descending from the mountain. As luck would have it, the codfish was struggling on the deck, and the tail directly hit the body of Haha that was rushing over. Daha's foot-long body was hit to the side by the tail before it could make a whine. Kinzu was frightened by the cry and hurried forward to pick up Daha. Fortunately, the little guy was fine. Although the codfish was strong, it was in mid-air and it was not a direct attack, so Daha was not hurt. It was just stunned by the sudden tail. Kinzu, is Daha okay? Zumengyo also came over nervously at this time. She heard the whimpering sound of Daha and asked worriedly. Haha, it's okay, it's just confused, it will be fine after a while. That's good, but this fish is really energetic. Slightly relieved, Zumengyo looked at the cod that was still jumping and said with a smile. This is what happens to fish that have just come out of the water. It won't be able to jump up in a while. With a smile, Kinzu rubbed the little guy's head and put it on the deck again. After being put down by Kinzu, Daha finally came back to his senses from his confusion and made a woohoo sound from his throat, which was so aggrieved. Just now, it saw a black shadow flash by, and then it flew away. It was agreed to be a fair duel, but the guy actually attacked by surprise. At this time, Xiaohe also hurried to his brother's side, his little heart pounding. That big guy was too cruel. It hasn't done anything to you yet, and you've already sent my brother flying. Seeing Xiaohe come in, Hector climbed up from the deck, shook his snow-white fur, and began to rearrange the battle plan. Xiaohe was relieved to see that his brother was fine. After the two little guys whimpered together for a while, they split into two groups and rushed towards the enemy who was still struggling to death. Kinzu, they went over again, and you didn't stop them. Zumengyo lowered her head and saw that the two little guys still wanted to provoke the cod. After saying something to Kinzu with some concern, she wanted to stop them. It's okay, the little guys just need to exercise more, there's no danger. Kinzu grabbed Zumengyo who wanted to go forward and said with a smile, not worrying about the safety of the two guys at all. You're so cruel, they are still so young, what if they get hurt? It has to be said that women are animals with overflowing love. It has only been a few hours since they arrived, and they have been conquered by the two little guys. Kinzu was a little depressed. Looking at Zumengyo who was fighting for the little guys, he felt wronged. It was not me who asked them to go. While the two were talking, Daha had already approached the cod. At this time, the cod had no strength to struggle. It lay on the deck motionless, as if it was dead. But Daha was not fooled by the appearance of this guy. Damn, you were just pretending. I was ambushed by you just now. Let me see how I deal with you this time. Slowly, Daha approached the cod and patted the snow-white belly of the fish with his front paws. As soon as the front paws touched the body, the cod, which looked close to death, suddenly jumped on the deck again. Retracting his little paws calmly, Daha gently moved his body, left the attack range of the cod, and squatted aside. Little guy, I knew you were pretending. Jump hard. I'm waiting for you today. After a few jumps, the cod could no longer jump. It was almost dying after being out of the sea for too long. Seeing this, Hector was no longer polite. He pounced and pressed down the cod that was still struggling. Xiaohe also pounced and pressed down on the cod's tail without hesitation. Together with his brother, they controlled the Atlantic cod that was a circle larger than their bodies. Well done, here is a reward for you. Kinzu walked forward with a smile and took the poor cod from the two little huskies. By the way, he took out a few slices of veal jerky and fed them to the two little guys. These two little huskies are so smart. Let's go back and raise a husky too, Lan, who was watching with envy, asked Liang next to him for advice. Although he was asking for Liang's opinion, the firm tone made him know that it was just a consultation. Oh. No, it should be a notification. What else could Liang say? He nodded in agreement. He was so depressed. The two little guys looked at him with a strange look. The little huskies were very sensitive to such malicious looks. When he raised his head, he saw two malicious eyes in the air. Woof 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 woof. The little guy who won the first battle would not be polite to you and rushed towards Liang. He stopped 1 meter away from him and barked at him. Qinzu was so happy that he winked at the boss and said, "Boss, look, even the little guys don't like you." After that, he ignored Liang who was depressed and wanted to hit the wall, and called the big and small huskies who were still barking. He picked up the fishing rod again and threw it into the blue ocean. At this time, Qinzu noticed that the seawater here was clearer than the seawater around the ranch. The not-so-hot sunlight in the sky could penetrate the sea surface and directly shine into the seawater more than 1 meter deep. The entire upper layer of the ocean was illuminated as if it were transparent. However, the sunlight can only penetrate more than 1 meter deep. Under the calm sea surface, there is still an endless dark seabed. After putting the hook back into the calm sea surface, Qinzu turned his head and looked at the fat man who was staring at the float next to him, revealing a bright smile. "Fatty, how are you going to deal with the cod for lunch? Steamed? Braised? Or fried? Don't be proud, isn't it just a dish? I will do it." The fat man pouted and continued with an unconvinced look on his face. "Come on, let's bet again, just like the previous one, whoever loses will be responsible for the second dish." "Oh, you said it, no cheating." Qinzu stared at the fat man with a smirk on his face and asked maliciously. Bangmin felt a little weak when Qinzu looked at him, but when he looked at his float that had not moved, he felt relieved. After encouraging himself in his heart, Bangmin continued, "Yes, that's what I said. Come on, I don't believe it. You can fish it out before me. Come on." "Damn it. Thanks to an unnamed book friend for the reward of 100 book coins. Thank you for your support. Today is the second update. Chapter 177 The Fish Ran Away." Bangmin was completely speechless watching Qinzu beside him spinning the reel, reeling in and releasing the fishing line to catch the fish. This guy must be cheating. Even Liang and Wang Xiao on the other side couldn't sit still, and kept looking back, almost dropping their fishing rods and running over to watch the fun. Qinzu didn't have time to consider their thoughts. He felt the strength in his hands. Well, the pulling force was not small. This time it should be a big fish. As usual, he let out the line first. After the fish ran more than 10 meters with the fishing line, Qinzu began to slowly reel it in. After reeling in and out several times, Qinzu felt that the strength in his hands was much less. He was delighted and quickly began to reel in the line. He caught a glimpse of Wang Min next to him who had been paying attention to this place, and Qinzu couldn't help but laugh in his heart. "I say, second brother, don't be unconvinced. I tell you, you have to pay for all the lunch today. HMPH, you should get it first. It might run away in a while." Wang Min was watching from the side, and his teeth were itching. He wanted to go over and cut Qinzu's fishing line. It's not that he was afraid of cooking, but the key is that he couldn't afford to lose face. At the beginning, he boasted that he was good at fishing. I don't know if it was the result of the fat man's curse, or if good things always take time. Just when Qinzu was about to make the last move and directly pull the guy out of the water, he felt a sudden lightness in his hand. His face froze, and Qinzu suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. After quickly pulling up the fishing line, he found that the fish hook was indeed empty. Puff, ha 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 ha, third brother, don't let me go. Really, isn't it just cooking? I'll make it in a while, and I guarantee it will be delicious. Wang Min was so happy watching from the side that he wanted to applaud and let you show off. Even this fish can run away, it's really amazing. Even the two little guys seemed to know that Qinzu had lost the bet. They laid beside Qinzu dejectedly and did nothing. "You're such a bad mouth. I'm just letting you go." Qinzu replied awkwardly, and stopped talking. He put on a new bait and threw the hook into the sea of stars again. "What's wrong? Did the fish run away?" Zhu Wenguo heard the conversation between the two and came over and asked with a smile. "Yes, it almost came up. It feels quite big." Qinzu smacked his lips and said with some regret, "Ah, a fish has taken the bait, yo-yo, come and see." Just as the two were talking, Surui, who was cleaning the room over there, suddenly shouted in surprise. Qinzu heard it and quickly put his fishing rod on the rod hanger and ran over with Zhu Wenguo. Sure enough, the fishing line on the rod hanger was stretched straight at this time, as if it would be dragged down by the guy in the sea at any time. "Quick, reel it in," Qinzu said to Surui in a hurry. I don't know how to reel in the line." Surui looked confused. How could she reel in the line? His forehead jumped. Kinzu took the fishing rod from the gold and began to fly the kite seriously. Slowly, reeling in and releasing, Kinzu slowly reeled in the fish, pulling the guy back from the sea to the boat little by little. After about 10 minutes of reeling, the guy under the water slowly surfaced. What kind of fish is this? It looks so strange. Zumengyo looked at the sea fish with a strangely long body in the sea and asked with some confusion. I don't know what it is either. You can call over and ask him. After saying this with a smile, Kinzu exerted force in his hand and lifted the sea fish in the water onto the deck. This sea fish is about 60 centimeters long and flattened laterally, slightly spindle-shaped, and gradually bulges from the back of the head to the base of the dorsal fin. The starting point of the dorsal fin is the highest point of the body, and it gradually bends downward towards the tail. The head is flattened laterally, and the tip of the snout is protruding and slightly curved. The mouth is large and shaped like a bird's beak. The upper jaw is obvious and free, and the rear end extends to the rear edge of the eye. There is a row of sharp teeth in each upper and lower jaw, which are sharp and bend inward. Except for the 4 pairs of teeth at the front of the lower jaw, the remaining teeth are small. The eyes are small, and the scales are also small, arranged in a shingle-like manner. The adipose fin is small and located very far back. The tail fin is deeply forked. There are 8 to 12 orange-red nuptial color horizontal stripes on the side of the body, and the anal fin and pelvic fin are grayish-white. Kinzu was watching carefully when Zumengyo and Will came over. Boss, you are lucky. This is a salmon with good nutritional value. Will pointed to the fish thrown on the deck by Kinzu and said with a smile. Is this fish valuable? Before Kinzu could answer, Surui on the side interrupted and asked. Will thought about it carefully and said, it seems to be more than $10 per pound now. I'm not sure. More than $10? Doesn't that mean that this fish will cost several hundred yuan in RMB? Surui looked at Kinzu in surprise. It seems that being a fisherman is still promising. Is this salmon? Kinzu ignored Surui's strange look and looked at the famous fish on the deck with some curiosity. He often heard of this fish, but this was the first time he actually saw it. Seeing Kinzu's curiosity about this fish, Will stood by and began to introduce it to Kinzu, a novice in the ocean. Salmon belongs to the salmon family, a type of salmon, and is a famous cold-water upstream spawning migratory fish. They are born in freshwater rivers, but grow up in the seawater of the Pacific Ocean. Salmon are carnivorous fish. They are ferocious by nature. After arriving in the sea, they prey on other fish. In the juvenile stage, they feed on aquatic insects of benthic organisms in the water. They can grow to more than 6 kilograms. They are precious economic fish and are deeply loved by people. Their eggs are also famous aquatic products with high nutritional value. They are known for their delicious meat and rich nutrition. They have always been regarded as precious fish. Kinzu nodded frequently. Anyway, he knew one thing now, that this thing is not cheap and tastes good. The first one is not important to him, but the second one is more attractive to him. Taste is the bottom line. Boss, it seems that the catch in the fishery is really good. When can we go fishing? Will asked expectantly. They have been here for a few days and have been idle. Now that they have a boat, they want to get into work quickly. Don't worry about it. It's not convenient for so many people here. Let's go out to sea next time. After thinking for a while, looking at the people around who were having fun, he shook his head and rejected Will's proposal. As he was talking, Ming shouted over there. Old Third, come here quickly, there's another fish biting the hook. Kinzu hurried back to his fishing position, picked up his rod and tried it. Well, the force is good, I hope it won't run away again. Since he thought of this problem, Kinzu didn't hesitate. He slid a few times a day to avoid more trouble. Kinzu directly used force to get the guy in the water onto the deck. Thank you for the reward and support from Marionette. Thank you. Today's first update recommend a very literary work of my brother My Pure Female Landlord Introduction. Zunio is a small person who lets life be simple and rough, and then wants to go back. Zunio, isn't it just a promise? Keep your word, that's a promise. White peach, a herbaceous plant of the Rosaceae family, is sexually soothing. Just like the heroine, strong, optimistic, and loyal. Only two people who treat love purely can rely on each other for warmth in that cold, inhumane world. There is no end to cruelty, only more cruelty. This is how I understand life. Chapter 178 Devilfish. Under Kinzu's violent pulling, a sea fish about 50 centimeters long but 80 centimeters wide was pulled onto the deck of the fishing boat. Before Kinzu had time to carefully look at his harvest, Will beside him exclaimed, "Oh my god, boss, how did you catch it? Let it go quickly." Kinzu looked at him in confusion and asked, "What's wrong?" "Will, what kind of fish is this?" Will did not answer him, but cautiously approached the side of the boat and looked at the calm sea surface, as if looking for something. At this time, the other people also saw something wrong and gathered around. Einwin looked at the silver-white sea fish on the ground, which seemed to be like a kite, and asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Shaking his head, Kinzu looked at Will, who was still looking around, and said in confusion, "I don't know." Will was very surprised to see this fish. "This seems to be a manta ray." Zumengyo looked at the motionless sea fish on the deck and said uncertainly, "Manta ray? What is that?" Kinzu was even more confused. He had never heard of this kind of fish. At this time, Will walked back from the side of the boat, his expression slightly relaxed, looking at Kinzu and said, "Boss, this is a manta ray, also known as a devil fish and a carpet ray. It is a very scary sea fish. Although it is not aggressive, when disturbed, its strength is enough to destroy a small boat. The habits of manta rays are also very strange. It has a lively temperament and often plays pranks. Sometimes it deliberately swims to the bottom of a small boat sailing in the sea, knocking on the bottom of the boat with its wings, making a whoosh, snap sound, which makes the people on the boat panic. Sometimes it runs to the side of a small boat anchored in the sea, hangs its meat horns on the anchor chain of the boat, pulls up the small line anchor, and makes people at a loss. Or it hangs itself on the anchor chain of the boat with its head fins, tracking the boat and running around quickly on the sea, making the fishermen mistakenly think that it is the devil who is making trouble, which is actually a prank of the manta ray. Moreover, its size and strength often frightened the fishermen, because once it got angry, it would break people's bones and kill them with just a flap of its powerful wings. Speaking of this, Will sighed deeply, his eyes looked deep and empty, as if he recalled something bad. Kinzu was puzzled by what he heard. Pointing to the silver-white sea fish on the deck that was no more than 1 meter long and weighed no more than 100 kilograms, he asked with a smile, "Will, you are not talking about this one, are you? Such a big fish can destroy a small boat. Can it break people's bones? Are you sure you are not kidding?" Will shook his head and said nothing. Instead, Zumengyo next to him took over. "Kinzu, Mr. Will is right. I remember hearing someone introduce that this kind of manta ray can grow to more than 8 meters in length and weigh 5,000 kilograms. At the time, it can jump out of the sea and glide on the sea surface. Just think about it, what kind of concept is that? What? 8 meters? 5,000 kilograms? Kinzu repeated it again with a stutter, looking at Zumengyo with his mouth wide open. Nodding, Zumengyo said affirmatively. "Yes, an adult manta ray can grow to 7 or 8 meters and weigh 4 or 5 tons. What about this one? It's not a juvenile, is it?" Kinzu pointed at the manta ray squirming on the nail plate again, and asked with a dry throat. "Yes, boss, this is a juvenile manta ray, and usually a juvenile manta ray will be accompanied by an old manta ray. They value their children very much. So, let's change places quickly." Will woke up from his memories, looked at Kinzu, and said solemnly, "As far as he knew, female manta rays love their only child very much. It is not like other fish that lay thousands or tens of thousands of eggs at a time. For example, the sunfish can be said to be a high-yield fish, which can lay up to 300 million eggs at a time. Female manta rays do not lay eggs, they are ovoviviparous, which is rare among fish. It only gives birth to one child at a time, no wonder it pampers its only child. Then hurry up, change, go quickly." Kinzu was almost choked to death by this guy. "You know the danger, but you are still wasting time. Go and drive the boat quickly. If the fish father, or the fish mother, or the fish father and the fish mother come to the door and hit you, you will be disabled if not dead." After agreeing, Will hurried to the cabin and shouted loudly, "Simon, hurry up," and set off immediately. Simon, who was bragging and chatting with the fisherman, was a little dazed. Didn't he just drop the anchor? Why did he leave? "Go quickly, the boss caught a young devilfish. For safety reasons, change the place quickly." Seeing Simon still standing there in a daze, Will shouted at him again. Simon understood now, and was also shocked. "What kind of luck is this, boss, and this works?" He knows the devilfish. It is a gentle sea fish, but once it involves its offspring, it will immediately turn into a devil. After greeting two fishermen who were a little dazed, Simon and his companions hurriedly began to raise the anchor. On the other side, Kinzu and his companions collected all the fishing gear, and then formed a small circle, surrounding the poor little manta ray. He stared blankly at the notorious little devil of the sea in front of him. The silver-white devilfish in front of him was diamond-shaped, with a wide and flat head and a wide and flat snout. The pectoral fins were large and thick, like wings. In front of the head, a pair of protruding cephalic fins differentiated from the pectoral fins were located on both sides of the head. The mouth was wide and large, and the small teeth were thin and numerous, arranged almost like paving stones, which made people feel cold at the bottom of their hearts. The upper and lower jaws had tooth bands, the nostrils were just on both sides of the mouth, a small triangular hole was located behind the eyes, and there was a thin and whip-like tail dragging behind it. Looking at the cool-looking manta ray in front of him, which looked like a future fighter in a science fiction movie, Kinzu couldn't help but be curious and walked forward to see if it was dead or not. "What are you doing?" Zumengyu asked helplessly, grabbing the reckless guy. "I'm just checking if it's dead or not." "What's wrong?" Kinzu, who was grabbed by Zumengyu, looked at her with some confusion and asked. Its tail is poisonous. You're going to go up like this. What if you get stuck?" Pointing at the small tail of the little manta ray in front of him, Zumengyu explained helplessly, and at the same time felt a little funny in her heart. With this level, she still wanted to be a good fishery owner. Touching his nose, Kinzu felt a little embarrassed when he was looked at by Zumengyu. He felt wronged in his heart. How the hell did I know it was poisonous? Although I'm a biology major, I'm not a marine biology major. Thanks to Fengxiai and Concert Kid for their rewards and support, and to Xiao Langzi for his 1024,500 starting coins. See us escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 179 Release Notice. I have received a notice from the editor that this book will be available on April 1, which is April Fool's Day. I hope that book friends will support it. In addition, book friends who have made a fortune should hurry up and start selling it, because the contract is signed with Twangship and they have to reverse the fee. Starting from April 1, this book will be charged starting from the 30th chapter. Chapter 180 Adopting a Devilfish. Is it poisonous? Staring at the very cool manta ray, Kinzu fully demonstrated the spirit of a good student who is not ashamed to ask questions. Yes, there is a stinger hidden in its tail. Zumengyu pointed at the slender tail of the little manta ray. When Kinzu was about to continue asking questions, the little manta ray that was originally lying quietly on the deck suddenly moved. I saw its two wings-like body undulating left and right, and then suddenly jumped up from the deck. It glided straight to the side of the ship. The girls who were watching over there were so scared that they screamed and scattered. Even Kinzu and the other men were scared. Can this guy fly? Fortunately, it was young after all, and it couldn't jump out of the water directly like their parents, and cross a small fishing boat and then fall into the water. The height of the little manta ray's jump was more than 1 meter high, and it glided about 2 meters, and then fell down. Fortunately, Kinzu used a lot of strength to throw it up, and it landed directly in the middle of the deck, which prevented it from gliding directly into the sea. He quickly found a net bag and put the guy into the net bag. Now he hasn't figured out how to deal with it. When Zumengyu said that this guy could grow to more than 7 meters, Kinzu felt his heart pounding, especially since this guy's attack power was not weak. Simon and his friends worked hard for a long time and finally brought up the anchor that had just been driven into the seabed. After making a gesture to the captor signal wall to start the boat, he sat down on the deck. Kinzu put the manta ray in the net bag and brought it over, followed by the fat man who was the only fool and brave. Zumengyu also wanted to come over, but was pulled back by Surui. This guy is too dangerous, so it's better to save it. As for the other girls, they hid behind the man and looked at him secretly. The scene just now scared them, especially Lin Xiu, whose heart was still beating non-stop. At that moment, the manta ray rushed straight towards her. Fortunately, Wang Xiao beside her pulled her back, which avoided a tragedy. Simon, how should we deal with this guy? Kinzu asked Simon, who was sitting on the deck as he watched the fishing boat slowly start to move. Looking at the little manta ray with complicated eyes, Simon sighed and said, "Boss, as long as there is no movement for a while, it doesn't matter how to deal with it. Generally, adult manta rays will not leave young manta rays too far away. If there are no adult manta rays around, then it doesn't matter." "Why is there no adult manta ray around?" Isn't it said that adult manta rays will not leave young fish? Fatty Wangming also imitated Qinzu and asked a shameless question. Well, if the young fish is not accompanied by an adult manta ray, it is either lost or the adult manta ray has been killed. Although manta rays are powerful, they are still not good enough in front of humans. Simon looked at the fat man strangely and explained slowly. The fat man was very hurt, especially when he was looked at by Simon's color, as if he was talking about him. Why did the adult manta ray die? There is only one possibility: it was caught, and then it must have been eaten by a foodie. And foodies are generally fat. So, if I keep it, there will be no adult manta ray to find it again, right? Qinzu also glanced at the fat man's fat body, nodded secretly, and felt that Simon's words made sense, and then asked thoughtfully. Wait. Boss, you want to keep it? Simon was shocked by Qinzu's words and climbed up from the deck directly. What a joke, they couldn't avoid it in a hurry, and the boss actually wanted to keep it. Ahem. Yes, I promise I won't let it hurt anyone. Qinzu touched his nose, feeling a little embarrassed. This was indeed a bit of a blow to them. He knew that they would think of something sad when they saw the manta ray, but he still wanted to raise a manta ray. However, who can resist the fact that this guy has grown up to be so handsome? Just think about it growing to be as big as 7 or 8 meters, not to mention how witchy it is in his heart. Seeing Qinzu's guarantee that the manta ray would not hurt people, Simon became a little anxious. What kind of guarantee is that? Animals are not people, can you still control them? Although you are the boss, you can't do this, right? Just when he was about to open his mouth to fight back, Simon suddenly remembered something, turned his head to look at the 2 well-behaved little huskies, and thought about the 2 sky overlords on the 2nd floor of the boss's villa. So he sat back on the deck silently. No more words. Seeing that Simon was no longer talking, the remaining 2 fishermen did not speak either. Anyway, they just followed Will. No way. Third brother, are you serious? Seeing that Simon was actually convinced by Qinzu, Wangmin quickly pulled Qinzu quietly. Isn't this guy crazy? He was a little scared when he heard the introduction of the manta ray. It's really not something that ordinary people can stand to drag the boat to play pranks at any time. Yes, I have this idea. Don't you think it's interesting? Qinzu looked at Wangmin with excitement, and kept using his hands to gesture something. Qinzu, you have to think carefully. This manta ray is not like the cats and dogs you raise. Zhu Mengyu also advised from the side. Although she knew that Qinzu was good at dealing with animals, if someone was hurt, it would not be a joke. Don't worry, don't you still believe me? Think about that koi, wasn't it also dealt with? Qinzu smiled proudly at Zhu Mengyu and raised his eyebrows. Zhu Mengyu almost laughed out loud. We'll replan the sailing route, and then, the deck One slowly followed the coastline for more than 10 minutes, and then came to another sea area. We'll slowly stop the fishing boat, signaled to Simon and the other 2, and asked them to drop anchor, and then came to Qinzu. Boss, what are you going to do with this guy? Eat it or let it go? Seeing that Qinzu was still holding the manta ray, Will asked without worry. Qinzu looked at the middle-aged man in front of him who was unbelievably strong, and swallowed his saliva. Then he told the story again. Raising manta ray? Sure enough, Will's reaction was exactly the same as Simon's, and they both looked at Qinzu in disbelief. Qinzu was helpless. He had to explain again, and Will looked at him with some doubt. Really, don't worry, he will definitely not hurt anyone. Qinzu was a little helpless when Will looked at him, and he further assured. How can you guarantee that no one will be hurt? Will was a little surprised, but after thinking about it carefully, he was relieved. Thanks to 10-year-old Bug for the reward and support, the first update today. Chapter 181 Another big fish is caught. I say, third brother, what are you doing dawdling there? Are you going to compete or not? Wangmin looked at Qinzu, who was taking a long time to release a fish, and shouted in annoyance. Qinzu came back to his senses from his contemplation, and quickly agreed, trotting to the side of the boat. Picking up the fishing gear on the side, Qinzu hung the bait while laughing and teasing. Second brother, you really won't give up until you see the Yellow River. I told you that you can't beat me. TSK, this is just the beginning, why are you in a hurry? It's still unclear who will win or lose. Wangming stubbornly retorted. This is just the beginning, he will not admit that he will lose. Isn't the old saying said? Things will change. Qinzu pouted and decided to speak with facts. He must let him know that even if he tried hard, he was still just a pickle. After hanging the bait, Kinzu glanced at the fat man, who felt a little guilty with a proud look, and threw the hook directly into the sea. However, maybe it was really a matter of luck. Kinzu's luck ran out this time. Although his fishing skills were amazing, the prerequisite was that there had to be enough fish under the water. Wang started fishing soon after. He lifted up a small, narrow, and about 20 centimeters long green fish that he had pulled up, and said to Kinzu with a smile, "Third brother, it seems that your luck is not good. I'm already open. So, you're responsible for this fish at noon. Second brother, you should also catch a fish that is edible. You are so embarrassed to let me do it for such a cheap fish." Kinzu looked at the green fish and curled his lips with a look of disdain. Wang was a little angry now. What does this mean? Are you trying to cheat? He stopped fishing and stood up and said in a hurry, "I say, second brother, this bluefish costs at least several dozen yuan per pound in China. How come it is worthless?" Kinzu pointed at the cod that was put into the small freezer next to him, which meant, "You can see for yourself." Wang immediately sat down again like a deflated ball. There was no way, compared with the cod, this bluefish was indeed a bit inferior. "Ha ha, third brother, his fish is not good, how about mine?" Liang held up a sea bass that was as long as an adult's arm, and smiled to help Wang take over the topic. Kinzu was speechless. What's going on? Has he become a public enemy? That's right, Kinzu, let's see your skills at noon today. Although Wang Xiao didn't catch any fish, he also expressed his interest in participating in the game that pits the rich. Kinzu looked at this guy with a sidelong glance, and pursed his lips towards the background of the squat leader Linzu. "Little guy, do you think I don't know why you came to the United States so happily?" Speaking of this, Kinzu felt funny. Wang Xiao was also a seed of infatuation. He took great care of the squat leader Linzu and was simply obedient to her. As for Linzu, I don't know if it was because of her personality or something else, she always looked careless, making it difficult for people to see her inner thoughts. Not counting the time in school, it has been 2 or 3 years since graduation, and the two still get along in this way. No one has ever had a boyfriend or girlfriend, which made Kinzu and his brothers feel anxious for him. After all, they must be familiar with Linzu and know that she is a very good girl. If you say that she has no feelings for Wang Xiao, that is impossible. When something happens, she cares about this guy more than anyone else. This time, Kinzu brought several people here, and he might have intended to match the two. Wang Xiao, who was watching the excitement with high interest, immediately became timid when he saw Kinzu's expression. He quickly put his hands together and bowed to Kinzu pitifully, with an expression that said, "Boss, I was wrong." Tsk. Liang, Li Kaiang, and Wang immediately gave him 3 straight middle fingers, expressing their strong contempt for this fence-sitter. "Hey, what are you doing? Don't bully Xiao." Hearing the noise behind them, several girls who were talking and laughing turned their heads. Linzu saw these guys at a glance, giving Wang Xiao the middle finger, and she immediately stopped. After looking at each other for a few times, Wang laughed out a strange gugger sound and teased, "Big squad leader, why are you distressed?" Linzu curled her thin lips without blushing and said unhappily, "I'm just afraid that I won't have a follower in a while." "What's the matter?" "Fatty Wang, do you want to be my follower?" Wang was choked and lost his voice. "What a joke, who can stand being your follower except Shaola, the big fool?" Just when the few people had just reached a ceasefire agreement, Kinzu suddenly felt the fishing rod in his hand suddenly sink, and couldn't help but let out a "Huh." "What's wrong?" Zhu Wengyou didn't care about Surui's eyes that could eat people, and directly stuck the fishing rod to this lazy guy, walked to Kinzu's side and asked with concern, "It seems that there is a big guy down there." Kinzu quickly stood up and controlled the hand rod with both hands. The pulling force from below was so great that the fishing line was stretched so tight that it was about to break. With his strength, he felt that the fishing rod in his hand was about to fly out of his hand. Fortunately, the fishing line he chose this time was 1.2 PE line, otherwise it would have been pulled apart long ago. Kinzu was thankful in his heart, and at the same time shouted to Will, "Quick, get the stuff, there is a big guy below." Will, who was cleaning the oven and preparing lunch utensils, immediately dropped the things in his hands after hearing this, motioned Simon to get the harpoon, and walked over with a large net bag. "Boss, let go of the line quickly, don't let this guy break the fishing line." "Slide it." Seeing that Kinzu didn't let go of the line to slide the fish, Will reminded him from the side. "Damn, I forgot." Kinzu wanted to slap himself. He was so busy controlling the hand rod that he forgot to slide the fish. Wang Ming and others who came to watch the excitement couldn't help but roll their eyes at the same time. Can you be more reliable? Especially Wang Ming, this guy was so anxious, just like a cat being scratched, he wanted to kick this guy aside and take his place. How come he didn't have a share in such a big fish fishing? The fat man looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, with a look of grief and indignation, which really made anyone cry and feel sad. Fatty, if you don't want to see it, get out of the way, I can't see it. Suruli was blocked outside for a long time and couldn't squeeze in. She was getting anxious, and then she saw Wang Ming looking up at the sky. Good guy, Suruli's temper came up all of a sudden. You guy didn't want to see it, it's fine, but you didn't want to see it and you took up a seed. Isn't this too much? The second update, it was put on the shelves suddenly. Liu was rushing to finish the manuscript overnight. There will be another update soon. There should be 3 to 5 updates on the first day of the release, and more will be added depending on the situation. Chapter 182 Il's Faith. So Will took Kinzu to the live fish preservation cabin of the Dekino. 1 and put the silvery white little manta ray in the net bag. Because it was designed according to the ocean-going fishing boat, the fishing boat was also equipped with a seawater tank, which was specially used to store some precious fish species. After all, the price of some rare fish alive and dead is incomparable. Of course, before putting it in, the manta ray was already named Keen. Manta ray, juvenile, quality, bronze level specialty, jumping skill, jumping LV1, growth potential. 3 stars. Looking at the attributes of this guy, Kinzu just wanted to spray it in the face. This week. Really unworthy at the title of manta ray. While Will was not paying attention, Kinzu directly threw a gene enhancement over, and the little manta ray, which was originally a little sluggish, immediately became energetic and kept moving back and forth in the originally extremely small wooden basin. Manta ray, juvenile, quality, white eyes level commander specialty, jumping, gliding. Skills. Jump LV2, Glide LV1, Slap LV1, Sting LV1. Growth potential. 5 stars. Well, is this more like a fish? At least it won't be eaten when it goes out. Kinzu was very satisfied with this and muttered to himself. He stretched out his hand and was about to touch the little guy, but Will next to him suddenly pulled him back and said solemnly, "Boss, for the sake of your own safety, you can't do this." Kinzu smiled, stretched out his hand with 5 fingers facing the sky, and snapped his fingers in Will's puzzled eyes. The little manta ray, which had just come into contact with the seawater after a long time and was still happily playing, suddenly stopped swimming. Then, in Will's incredible eyes, the little guy turned around and gently flapped his fleshy wings, swam towards the 2 of them, turned his body upside down in front of Kinzu, and exposed his white belly. Kinzu quickly reached out and helped the little guy up. Fish in the water are not as free as other animals on land. Just like a shark, if you turn it over, it can drown itself. Will didn't try to stop Kinzu. Just like animals, the abdomen is always the most vulnerable part of animals. No animal will easily expose its abdomen. Even the coated brown bear, the overlord of the deep forest, will only expose its abdomen when facing its most trusted companion. After taking a deep look at Kinzu, Will said excitedly, "Boss, are you the reincarnation of a druid?" Kinzu turned the little manta ray over and patted it gently, then let the little guy play by himself. Suddenly, he heard Will's question and was a little stunned. "What druid? What are you talking about?" He knew about druids, and they were often mentioned in movies and novels. But what does it have to do with him? Only in this way can we explain why animals are so close to you. Druids are created by the great goddess of nature and have a natural affinity for animals. Will said quickly and hurriedly, his face full of excitement, as if he had seen a miracle. He was almost kneeling on the ground to worship. Kinzu patted the broad shoulders of the excited man in front of him and said with a smile, "Will, are you kidding? I'm an Oriental, but I don't believe in the goddess of nature." Will was not disappointed when he heard this, but continued to look at Kinzu with his fanatical eyes. He said in a trembling voice, "No, boss, you must be a noble great druid, right? The goddess of nature is the god of all mankind, regardless of the east and the west, you must be. It stands to reason that as a being who can go out to sea with a small boat and hunt killer whales alone, Will should sneer at these weird things, but on the contrary, he believes in them." The reason why he was so excited when he saw the manta ray was because of the shipwreck more than 10 years ago. Because he clearly remembered that 20 years ago, when he had just turned 20, he took Simon, who was 3 years younger than him, and went out to sea with his friends. At the time, they were a group of 5 people, driving this wooden sailboat to fish on the sea. On a sunny morning, his friend found a fish with head fins and threw the net excitedly, and then the disaster came. Suddenly, a huge fish with a pair of head fins emerged from behind the small fish, and it soared into the air like a flying general. Then, it landed like a mountain pressing down on the top of the head, and the long tail dragged and brushed the body of the friend, and fell into the water with a loud snap. The unlucky friend suddenly screamed, blood suddenly came out of his body, and he fell into the sea. However, this was not the end. Just when everyone was about to rescue the unlucky guy, the sound of water suddenly came to their ears. Everyone only had time to see a black shadow before they were heavily smashed into the sea. The not-so-small sailboat was torn into pieces. No trace of it could be seen anymore. After falling into the water, he grabbed a piece of broken board and turned around. He only saw Simon, but no trace of the others. In the end, only he and Simon survived the shipwreck. Simon fainted soon after, but he dragged him to drift in the sea for several hours. The reason why he was able to survive in the end was because he met a man riding a great white shark. He would never forget the shock at the time, a man without any weapons in his hands, riding on a great white shark known for its ferocity. The man was also an Asian and could not speak English. After sending them to a deserted island, he took the great white shark away, and what was left was the body of a killer whale that had just died. He didn't know what the man was called, nor why the great white shark listened to him, but he knew that it must be the messenger of the goddess of nature, who came to save him, a believer who was about to die. Kinzu didn't know that Will had such a miraculous experience. Seeing his fanatic look, he had to spread his hands helplessly and said in a nonsensical way, "Okay, Will, remember not to mention this to anyone. The goddess of nature doesn't want her people to know all this." Seeing him nod vigorously, Kinzu walked out of the cabin and headed for the deck. He was not worried at all that Will would go out and say something. He didn't say anything, and there was no evidence to prove that he was different from others. Even if there was a legendary Church of Light, he was not worried about being identified as a pagan. And seeing that he looked like a fanatic, maybe he could even abduct a capable helper. The first update is on the shelves. Thanks to Brother Shiafo for being the helmsman. Old Diane, steady. Thanks to the 500 starting coins reward from 10 years old Worm. Thank you all for your support. Thank you. Chapter 183 Bluefin Tuna. Surua stretched out her hand and pulled hard, and Wang Ming, a little creature weighing 200 pounds, was pushed aside by her. This shows how curious women are. Kinzu didn't have time to pay attention to the people behind him. He quickly put the line out, 1 meter, 2 meters, 5 meters, 10 meters. The reel was spinning rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, dozens of meters of fishing line went out. Quick, second brother, reel in the line quickly. Liang was anxious and jumped on the side, wishing he could reach out and grab the fishing rod and take over. Kinzu heard the words and quickly reeled in. For him, a fishing novice, such a big scene is still rare. Even the time with Xiaojun was much easier than this time. At least, there weren't so many people watching around. Glancing at the people around him with his eyes, Kinzu couldn't help but complain in his heart. If the fish ran away again, it would be a shame. He pulled the line back 10 meters, and then let it out a few meters. It took Kinzu more than 20 minutes to pull it back and let it out. Boss, this is really a big fish. Hold on, it's almost gone. Will looked at the huge waves that occasionally rose on the sea and the faint blue, and smiled and cheered Kinzu up. Such a big noise had already startled the two little guys. At this time, the two guys were standing at the bow, barking at the big fish that was struggling violently in the sea. Finally, after nearly half an hour of fierce competition, the big fish that was struggling violently in the sea slowly gave up resistance and was successfully pulled within 10 meters of the fishing boat by Kinzu. Looking at the blue fins that occasionally appeared on the sea surface, and the huge body of 1.5 meters, Liang on the boat thought for a moment and exclaimed, "Bluefin tuna." Kinzu heard the boss's exclamation, and the action of reeling in the line could not help but pause. What? Is this the legendary bluefin tuna? Kinzu paused for a moment, and the big fish in the sea got a chance to buffer, and immediately began to struggle violently again, and it escaped directly back to the fishing boat 20 meters away. He was shocked. If this legendary fish escaped, he would have the urge to dig a hole and bury himself. After stabilizing his body again, Kinzu began to slowly reel in and release the fishing line, and asked without looking back, "Boss, you are not mistaken, are you? This is a bluefin tuna." "Absolutely right, such a huge body, and those blue fins, what else can it be except bluefin tuna?" Liang promised solemnly, and he was almost patting his chest and swearing a poisonous oath. The others on the boat didn't care whether they understood or not, they just followed suit. Anyway, they didn't know it, and if someone was so sure, it must be it, right? Only Zumengyo frowned slightly. She felt that the fish in the water didn't look like the bluefin tuna she had seen before. Kinzu was so excited when he heard everyone behind him saying this. Bluefin tuna, what a wonderful name, just the name is worth, well, it's not worth much. He always heard people say how expensive bluefin tuna is, so he went to check the information. Bluefin tuna, English. Bluefin tuna, is the largest species of tuna. It has a short and strong body, a tapered and slender body, and a cross-shaped tail fin. The color from the bottom to the side of the body is bright, the upper body is dark blue, the fins are dark, the finlets are slightly yellow, and the caudal peduncle is black. The whole body is covered with scales, the mouth is quite large, the eyes are not big, the pectoral fins are short, and the end does not reach the center of the first dorsal fin. This is the biggest feature of this species. The body length is generally 1 to 3 meters, and the largest one is more than 3 meters long. Anyway, when he was in college, he heard others bragging and farting that in the small island country, a piece of bluefin tuna meat the size of a palm is worth 2,000 yen. Although I don't know whether it is true or not, it doesn't matter. Even if the value of a piece is doubled, 1,000 yen will do. Staring at the huge fish struggling violently in the seawater in front of him, well, the fins are dark blue, that's right. Kinzu estimated in his mind, this should be 400 or 500 kilograms, right? How much can it be sold for? Thinking about it, Kinzu's eyes were almost filled with dollar signs. Listening to the chattering in his ears, Will looked confused, he couldn't understand Chinese. However, looking at the tuna getting closer and closer to the fishing boat, he still suggested to Kinzu, "Boss, hurry up, pull it closer and let Simon give it a hard hit." Kinzu got anxious when he heard it. Don't bully me for not understanding the market. Can a bluefin tuna damaged by a harpoon be compared with a complete bluefin tuna? Although he didn't plan to sell it to the people at the small island country for enjoyment, wouldn't it be better to get it intact? Will, be careful, go get the trawl net, and be careful not to hurt this bluefin tuna, otherwise it won't sell for a high price. Without turning his head, Kinzu shouted to Will. Hearing this, Will was stunned for a moment, and quickly ran to the side of the boat again, staring at the big fish in the sea, and looked at it carefully again. "Ha, buddy, what's wrong? Are you going to tell me that this is not actually a bluefin tuna?" Looking at the confused look on the face of the guy in front of him, Kinzu couldn't help but tease him. "Boss, who told you that this is a bluefin tuna?" Will looked at the big tuna in the water with suspicion. "That's right, how could it be a bluefin tuna? Isn't this a bluefin tuna?" Kinzu was a little confused. The huge psychological gap made him almost lose his grip on the fishing rod. "No, this is T-Macoili. Look, its underside and belly are silvery white, with colorless cross-sections arranged with colorless dots. Only the first dorsal fin is similar to the bluefin tuna, which is blue. And its anal fin and fin are dark yellow, only the edges are black." Will pointed at the struggling big fish in the water. He introduced it carefully to Kinzu. Kinzu looked at it carefully, and it seemed that it was really as Will said, it really didn't seem to be a bluefin tuna. Suddenly, Kinzu became a little powerless, and said to Will, "Okay, let Simon hurry up and kill this son of a bitch. He wasted so much of my time." "Boss, although Mesu tuna is not as valuable as bluefin tuna, the quality of the fish is still very good. I believe you'll like it." Will gestured to Simon, then explained to Kinzu with a smile. "Really? Then hurry up and get it up, and have it for lunch." Hearing this, Kinzu became more interested and said with a smile. At the same time, he pulled the fishing line hard in his hand. Prepare to give the Mesu tuna in the water a final blow. Thank you for the reward of 500 starting coins from Ado Tajibai. Thank you for the reward of 2,000 starting coins from Xiao Lamzi 1024. Thank you for the reward of 500 starting coins from 10 years old worm. Thank you for the monthly ticket support from Marionette, Ado Tajibai, Xiao Lamzi 1024, and talent. Liuyun is very grateful. Chapter 184 Great White Shark. Subscribe. As Kinzu slowly exerted force with both hands, the 1.5 meter long Mesu tuna with a dorsal fin glowing with a hint of deep blue was slowly pulled to the side of the fishing boat. Holding a 7-foot harpoon with a cold glow, Simon swung his arm violently, and a flash of cold light flashed by, and the tuna in the water was immediately pierced through by the sharp harpoon. The azure seawater was immediately dyed red by the blood, and the unfortunate Mesu tuna began its dying struggle. Kinzu held the hand rope tightly, even though the Mesu tuna was struggling harder than before. He still controlled the fishing rod firmly. Slowly, the seawater became redder and the struggling force became weaker. This former ocean bully finally came to the end of its life. "Okay, that's it, boss, let go, we'll get it up," Bull said as he took the pole from Kinzu and waved to the two fishermen not far away. Aiden and Hubbard quickly dropped what they were holding and ran towards the side of the boat. Under Will's leadership, the group worked together to get the huge bluefin tuna onto the deck of the fishing boat. Simon found a knife and bled the dead tuna neatly. He looked at Kinzu and asked, "Boss, how do we deal with it? Freeze it or clean it and grill it at noon?" "Clean it and we'll get rid of it at noon." Kinzu shook his tired and sore arms and said with some resentment. Simon agreed and turned to the kitchen in the fishing boat, took some knives and started to separate the fish meat. "Oh, what a pity, why is it not a bluefin tuna? It's obviously a bluefin." Liang looked at the people staring at him, rubbed his hands, and smiled awkwardly. "TSK, boss, where is your professional knowledge? You can't even tell the difference between bluefin and Mesu?" Bangman squeezed into the crowd with great effort, and looked at Liang who was just making a solemn promise, and said something to add insult to injury. "Fatty Wang, you seem to have figured it out, where were you just now?" Lan looked at the guy who was taking advantage of the situation, and was a little unhappy. "What's going on? Is he bullying people?" "Ahem, I'm going to do that, are we going to continue fishing?" Bangman's old face was a little hot when he heard this. Could he say that he was chased aside by a little girl? No, absolutely not. Kinzu took a wet towel from Zumengyu and wiped his hands. After hearing Bangman's unreliable question, he said unhappily, "Second brother, are you still asleep or what? You've been here for more than half an hour. Are there any fish? And even if there are fish, they are definitely sharks attracted by the smell of blood." "What? You want to catch sharks? What's wrong with fishing for sharks? I haven't fished before. Find one for me to catch." Although he was shocked by Kinzu's words, he hadn't changed his habit of arguing for several years. He couldn't help but fight back. As luck would have it, just as the fat man finished speaking, Kinzu saw a white thing crossing the sea in the distance. He smiled and pointed his mouth towards that direction, saying, "Look, there's a shark. Here's a hook. Take it. Go fishing. Old Third, do you think you're some kind of god? You can get whatever you want." Bangman pouted at him disdainfully, turned his head and looked into the sea, still mocking this daydreaming guy without leaving any room for words. What is that?" Before the words were completely finished, Bangman opened his eyes, which were almost invisible because of his fatness, and stared closely at the white fin that suddenly appeared on the calm sea behind that fishing boat. "Look at that fin, it should be a great white shark, right?" Zumengyo took the towel, poked her head out to look outside, carefully recalled the memories in her mind, and said with some uncertainty, "Will, come and have a look. There are sharks coming. Do we need to change places?" Seeing that both of them were a little uncertain, Kinzu shouted from a distance to Will who was helping Simon dissect the bluefin tuna. Will was startled when he heard this, and hurried forward. Looking at the white dorsal fin sliding quickly on the azure sea, bringing out waves, he became a little nervous. "Boss, this is a great white shark. We need to change places. Damn, how can there be great white sharks in the fishery? I don't know how many of them there are." As he said this, Will became a little worried. Although it is normal to encounter sharks in the ocean, it is still within the scope of the fishery. Looking back at the vague coastline, it is not far from the land. If you accidentally encounter these guys during your patrol one day, it will not be fun. Moreover, if there is only one, it is fine. If there are more, or even a whole population, and these guys are allowed to eat and drink in the fishery, I don't know how much the fishery will lose production. They are all big eaters. Great white shark. Is this the legendary deep-sea overlord, the great white shark? Kinzu looked at it curiously, the fins that kept swimming on the sea surface, drawing beautiful arcs, and wanted to know what kind of scene was under the sea. Yes, this is the great white shark. I don't know how many of them there are, alas. Will sighed and shook his head. Without waiting for Kinzu to continue to express his opinion, he hurried over to start the fishing boat, preparing to change places and start today's lunch. No way, we just prepared to go fishing, and we have to change places again. Suru glared at Bangman in frustration. It was all this guy's fault. He mentioned sharks for no reason, and now sharks are here. Wang Min felt guilty when he was glared at by this girl, and he quickly lowered his eyebrows and walked aside, fearing that everyone would talk about him fishing for sharks again. Hey, Laowa, where are you running to? Qin Zhu retracted his gaze from the fish fin, looked at the guy who was about to run away with amusement, and shouted at his bag like a prank. At this moment, everyone's eyes turned to Wang Min on the side, and saw that this guy was bending over, moving step by step, and was sneaking towards the cabin like playing hide and seek. Ha ha, Laowa, what are you doing? Are you hungry? Li Yang looked at the embarrassed Wang Min with a strange smile on his face, and turned on the mocking mope directly without any kindness. Ahem, well, I'm preparing lunch, right, am I not looking for ingredients? Originally, Wang Min just made up an excuse, but it became more and more fluent as he spoke, and he pointed to the place where the cod was placed not far away, as if he was really going to prepare lunch. Well, that's it. I was just about to cook. Since you've taken the initiative, I'll reluctantly hand over this arduous task to you. Qin Zhu chuckled. Since you're so understanding, I have to oblige you. I was just worried that this guy would cheat after losing. Now, I'm in for a treat. Thanks to Subconscious Smile, QWEIKAKAI, Concert Boy, Fenxi, Crazy Rin Sung, Giant Ape Cow Yang, Man-Eating King, Tall and Cold, Zhao Jing Jin, Yibogui, and several other great people for their support. Thanks to Do Hoi Kai, I Like My Cousin, Liang from Jinyu, Lone Shadow Crane, Yuzhu Linfen, Unlimited Passion, and several other great people for their monthly ticket support. Today is the 4th update. I don't know what it means to be strong. I rely on my perseverance to add more updates. Part 2, Chapter 185 Grilled Fish Dinner. You know what, the reason why Qin Zhu wanted to trick Wang Min was mainly because this guy was really good at cooking. At least in Qin Zhu's opinion, his cooking was not much worse than his own after learning cooking skills. Looking at Wang Min's slightly bloated figure, Qin Zhu wondered maliciously in his heart, are fat people good at cooking? Otherwise, why would he be so fat? Since he couldn't avoid it, Wang Min didn't hide anymore. It's just a meal, who's afraid of who? Wang Min took out the only 3 sea fish from the ice storage, a cod of more than 40 centimeters, a sea bass as long as an adult salmon, and a bluefin mullet about 10 to 20 centimeters long. He curled his lips and said, there's only so much, who can eat it? Why don't you catch 2 more? Qin Zhu smiled and pointed to the Mesu tuna being dissected by Simon and Will, and said jokingly, hey, there's still one left. If you can finish that fish, I'll surrender to you without leaning against the wall in my life. TSK, do you think I'm a god? There's still one left. I've never cooked such a big fish. I don't even know how to cook it. Wang Min looked at the huge tuna and his scalp went numb. He quickly found an excuse to refuse. If he cooked it, he would be exhausted to death. In his heart, Wang Min cursed the landlord Qin who caught the tuna. Qin Zhu also felt that there was some truth in what he said. After all, he came from China, so it was understandable that he had never cooked such a big fish. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly reacted. I said, this is not in China, you are still preparing to braise it, today we are here to grill fish, do you understand? Looking at Wang Min, Qin Zhu said unhappily, I was almost fooled by you, the fish meat has been dissected for you, what else do you want? Looking at the pile of snow-white and delicate tuna meat with a bitter face, Wang Min sighed and muttered to himself, pitying his fat, and he didn't know if he could make up for it today. The Deki no. One sailed for a few minutes and stopped in a calm sea. At this time, the warm sunshine was a little hot, hanging high above the head, shining on this peaceful sea. Qin Zhu looked at the time, and it was already 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Simon prepared the bluefin tuna, filled the oven that Will had brought over with red-hot charcoal, and placed it on the deck, ready for grilling. Wang Min was searching for seasonings in the pile of seasonings nearby. These seasonings were all brought by Will from the manor, and many of them were domestic products that Qin Zhu bought at the Chinese supermarket. After finding the seasonings he needed, Wang Min quickly began to season the sea bass that was as long as an adult's arm. Although it's a barbecue, we have to do it differently from the foreigners, right? At the very least, we can't lose face as a foodie. Seeing Wang Min busying around with quick movements, Qin Zhu, who was leaning on the side of the boat and drinking a glass of juice with Zhu Mengyo, smiled and said to Zhu Mengyo beside him, you see, people still need to have something they love to do. Even Wang Min can become so agile for a good meal. Reaching out and stroking her long black hair that was blown by the sea breeze, Zhu Mengyo couldn't help but chuckle. She rolled her eyes at Qin Zhu who was staring at her and said with a smile, you guys just like to bully others. Don't you think he can do anything with his body shape? Looking at Zhu Wenguo with long hair fluttering in the sea breeze, Qin Zhu couldn't help but take a deep breath, as if he could smell the faint body fragrance in the air. Seeing Qin Zhu like this, Zhu Wenguo's pretty face flushed slightly, and she quickly moved 2 steps away from this pervert. Qin Zhu was a little embarrassed at first sight. He was rude to the beautiful lady. He quickly smiled and waved his hand and said, "Wenguo, you misunderstood us. You don't know that this guy may not be good at other things, but he is definitely an expert in studying food." Looking at Qin Zhu doubtfully, Zhu Wenguo said that she didn't believe it. How could such a fat guy have any cooking skills? You should first think about why fat people are fat. Qin Zhu smiled and prompted. Food. Zhu Wenguo was a little uncertain. Bingo, you got it right. Then, what are the conditions that a foodie must have? Qin Zhu raised his eyebrows proudly and continued to ask. Well, this should be studying how to eat. Zhu Wenguo seemed to understand something. Yes, so, fat people equals foodies equals good cooking skills. Looking at Qin Zhu, who was proudly announcing a Qin-style relationship table, Zhu Wenguo's face was dark. Banwen had no idea that his brother was using him to pick up girls. He was unwilling to admit defeat, and while brushing the fresh and white fish with seasoning, he was still muttering something. After being busy for about half an hour, Qin Zhu had drunk juice twice. Finally, lunch officially began under Wang Ming's arrangement. A rectangular dining table was carried to the deck by Simon and others, and plates of fresh fish were placed on it. These were all tuna meats brushed with sauce. As long as they were slightly grilled, they could be enjoyed. Although it was a grilled fish dinner, there were still a lot of vegetables prepared on it, such as lettuce, cucumber, tomato, onion, etc. They were all fresh vegetables picked from the vegetable garden in the manor, and now they were made into vegetable salads by Surui and others. Hey, 2 masters, the meal is ready. You guys also know to come back. Surui looked at the sweet couple with an unhappy face. She was drafted by Lin Zhu and others and has been busy until now. These 2 guys are so happy, drinking juice and enjoying the sea breeze. They are as comfortable as they can be. No, the more capable, the more work. With a light laugh, Zhu Wenguo stuffed the unfinished apple juice in her hand into Surui's sexy little mouth. HMPH, you know what's good for you. Surui took a big sip of the sweet apple juice, and then she felt that she was in a much better mood. Come on, make way, make way. Be careful not to get burned. While they were talking and laughing, Banwen came out of the cabin quickly with a large tray. Curiously looking at the large tray that Banwen had placed on the dining table, Qin Zhu took a quick look and saw that there was nothing missing. He asked in confusion, "Second brother, what are you cooking? What other dishes are there? Call me second brother. I've told you so many times, second brother." Banwen's face was full of dissatisfaction. "Oh, second brother, open it quickly and see what's inside." Qin Zhu's face was full of expectation. Banwen weakly lifted the stainless steel lid on the tray, revealing an exquisite dish inside. Qin Zhu's eyes sparkled. Thanks to Xiaowei Holdings 1024 for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you for your support. Today is the 5th update. I don't know how to be strong, I just rely on perseverance to add more updates. Part 3. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 186 Little Secret, Subscription Request. Looking at the Sichuan-style spicy grilled sea base in front of him, smelling the spicy fish aroma in the air, Qin Zhu couldn't help swallowing his saliva. How is it, third brother, is it okay? This is the exclusive secret recipe, Ban's Sichuan-style grilled sea base. Seeing Qin Zhu's surprised look, Banwen proudly introduced it to the side. Who knows, it looks okay, but I don't know how it tastes. Come, let me try it first. Swallowing hard, Qin Zhu said something that didn't mean what he meant, and then picked up the chopsticks and wanted to start eating directly. Hey, don't, this is not delicious, don't try it, really, come, everyone eat first. Banwen stopped Qin Zhu, who wanted to use his chopsticks, smiled, ignored this guy, and began to invite Zhu Wenguo and others to sit down and eat, and he was ready to start grilling tuna. Rolling his eyes helplessly, Lao was getting more and more stingy, and he bypassed Banwen directly. Kinzu stretched out his chopsticks and picked up a piece of fish meat that was red with spicy oil and put it into his mouth. Well, not bad, Laowa, your skills have improved. I remember that your last time was not as good as this time. Chewing the tender fish meat of the sea bass, Kinzu nodded frequently, expressing his affirmation of Chef Wang's cooking skills. Come on, Mingyo, you should try it too. Wang's cooking skills are still very good. Holding the plate, Kinzu picked some fish meat and handed it to Zhu Mingyo, who was sitting at the dining table and looked very ladylike. Taking the plate, Zhu Mingyo looked at Kinzu doubtfully. Although the dish in front of her, Wang's Sichuan roasted sea bass, looked very good, smelled very fresh and fragrant, and had a spicy feeling in it, she still didn't believe how good it would taste. Zhu Mingyo picked up a small piece of fish meat with some soup still in it with chopsticks and put it into her mouth. She began to chew it slowly. As soon as the fish meat entered her mouth, a mixture of fresh, spicy, and tender fish meat quickly filled her mouth. But when she started chewing, the crisped fish skin gave her a feeling that she would never get tired of eating it. Zhu Mingyo's beautiful big eyes suddenly lit up, blinked twice, looked at Wangmin who was busy there with some surprise, nodded and praised. It's really good, the fish meat is spicy and tender, and it melts in your mouth. I didn't expect it. The unexpected word was said by Zhu Mingyo with deep meaning. I don't know if she didn't expect that Fat Man's cooking skills to be so good, or something else. Rui, come on, try it too, it's your favorite spicy flavor. As she said that, Zhu Mingyo also picked up the plate and got another piece of fish meat for Surui. Third brother, how is it? Second brother's cooking skills haven't declined, right? Liang took Wang to wash his hands and came back. Seeing Kinzu and the other two eating happily, he couldn't help asking. Of course, come on, eldest brother, fourth brother, and Xiao, come over. What would you like to drink? Red wine. Kinzu asked the people who gathered around to sit down, and asked the men present. Hey, Kinzu, where are we? Why don't you ask us? Lin Zhu muttered to Kinzu in dissatisfaction while picking up the fish with chopsticks. Hearing the voice in his ear, Kinzu suddenly wanted to slap himself. How could he forget that this little drunkard was still around? What should he do now? Turning his head with a stiff face, Kinzu did not dare to look at Wang Xiao and the boss. With a look of fear and resentment, he looked at the various juices on the table and said to Lin Zhu with a wry smile, "Little girl, why don't you just drink the juice? Why? Stop talking nonsense and bring out the wine quickly." What? Are you reluctant? Lin Zhu snorted, very dissatisfied with Kinzu's slowness. Kinzu had no choice but to put on a bitter face and walked into the cabin under the murderous eyes of Wang Xiao and Liang. At the foot of the cabin living room, there was a small bar, which was filled with various foreign wines. Of course, it couldn't be a very good brand. They were all some locally produced red wines and brandy. All of them were not worth $10,000. These were all incidental to the decoration. His own collection had not been transferred up yet. Kinzu took 3 bottles of locally produced red wine from the wine cabinet and then came to the dining table reluctantly. Kinzu, you are so slow. What's wrong? Do you still remember what happened back then? Don't worry, I will never force you to drink today. Looking at Kinzu who was walking towards her reluctantly, Lin Zhu was speechless. It was just that I got you drunk once, a few times. Is it really that serious? She rolled her eyes helplessly at the girl. When did you not say that? In the end, you went back to sleep peacefully, and we brothers slept on the street until dawn. Hey, it seems like there is something interesting. Come on, Sister Lin Zhu, tell me. Seeing the expressions of several people, Suruli's curiosity, which was stronger than a cat, was immediately aroused. She began to pester Lin Zhu, wanting to find out the gossip here. Now even Zhu Mingyo, who was always indifferent to everything, quietly pricked up her ears, wanting to listen to what Lin Zhu had to say. When Lin Zhu heard that someone was interested in her glorious achievements, she immediately became excited. Just when she was about to start talking endlessly, she looked up and saw 5 pairs of green eyes, including the fat man who was barbecuing in the distance, staring at her motionlessly. Being stared at by those resentful eyes, Lin Zhu couldn't help but shiver. She rolled her eyes at those guys and looked at the 2 girls in front of her who were looking at her expectantly without blinking. She said awkwardly, well, it's nothing, just some interesting things in college. Kinzu and the others breathed a sigh of relief. It's better not to expose such a shameful thing. Seeing Suruli's unwilling look and wanting to ask something, Kinzu quickly interrupted her, pretending not to see her fierce look, and said to Will, who was about to help the fat man grill the fish. Come, Will, you also try it, it's a very distinctive Chinese dish. Ignoring Wang Ming's resentful look, Kinzu directly called Will over. Second brother, for the sake of the brother's face, don't lose it in front of everyone, just bear with it. Besides, grilling fish and so on, that's the chef's job. Just bear with it. Will shrugged helplessly at Wang Ming, who was busy on the side. It seemed that he couldn't be a good person. He wiped his hands and walked towards the dining table. What's the old saying? It's called the sky is big, the earth is big, and the boss is the biggest. Well, that's it. Coming to the dining table, Will picked up some sea-bass meat with a fork and put it in his mouth. He nodded while chewing. This kind of fish meat, which is delicious and has few bones, is what they like. Chapter 187. Preparing to cast the net. Boss, this fish is really good. Sucking on his lips that were red from the spiciness, Will gave Kinzu a thumbs up with admiration. Wang Ming was watching from the side and wanted to vomit blood. He shouted in his heart, "Brother, I cooked that fish." But Will couldn't hear his shouting in his heart. After eating a piece of fish, he couldn't help but pick up some more with his fork. Lin Zhu next to him picked up the opened red wine and poured a little into the glasses of several people, even Zhu Mengyo and Su Ruyi. Seeing that Zhu Mengyo didn't refuse, Kinzu looked at her in surprise. He didn't expect that this girl would drink. As if seeing Kinzu's doubts, Zhu Mengyo smiled gently, raised her glass and clinked it with him, and said, "Red wine can beautify the skin. I basically drink a small glass before going to bed at home." He nodded suddenly. He had often heard others talk about this before, and he didn't know whether it was true or not. Kinzu lowered his head and took a sip of the dark red wine in the goblet, smacked his lips gently, and said with a smile, "Well, does this wine taste good? Try it. How does it compare to the domestic ones?" Hearing this, Zhu Mengyo raised the wine glass and shook it gently, watching the dark red wine shaking with the glass. He lowered his head and took a sip gently, then squinted his eyes and tasted it carefully. After a while, Zhu Mengyo opened her beautiful eyes that seemed to be able to see through people's hearts, and said with a smile, "Well, the taste should be mellower, and the fruity aroma is also very strong. It should have been brewed just this year." Kinzu gave Zhu Mengyo a thumbs up and said with a smile, "Amazing, you can taste this. Unlike me, I feel good when I drink it. If you really let me say it, I don't understand. It's nothing. At the beginning, I heard from my friends that red wine can beautify, so I went to understand it." Zhu Mengyo smiled and waved her hand, very modest. "Boss, I remember that we also have a vineyard in our manor. You can also plant grapes on them again next year, so that you can drink your own wine." Seeing Kinzu's interest in wine, Will interjected, "Oh, you have a great plantation on your ranch?" Looking at Kinzu in surprise, Zhu Mengyo asked. "Yes, the ranch is too big, and the previous owner opened a piece of land to plant grapes, but because no one has taken care of it for a long time, most of them are dead." Kinzu scratched his head. He had considered this matter, but now is not a good season to plant grapes, so he put it off. "Here, grilled meisu tuna, everyone try it." Wang Ming's loud voice rang out at an inopportune time, interrupting the harmonious atmosphere between the two. Looking at the large plate of golden grilled tuna slices he brought up, Kinzu smiled and said, "Come, try it. This guy is grilling this kind of fish for the first time, and I don't know how it tastes." Kinzu took a piece of golden grilled tuna meat with an unknown sauce on the plate and handed it to Zhu Mengyo first. "Let her taste it first." Zhu Mengyo didn't hesitate to take the plate, picked up the tuna slices with chopsticks, slowly put them into her mouth, and chewed them slowly like a lady. As soon as the tuna slices entered her mouth, the first thing she felt was the aroma of the unknown sauce. The sauce was not very spicy, but just a little salty. After chewing it gently for 2 times, only the surface of the tuna meat was grilled badly, but once you take a bite, you'll know what tenderness is. "It's really great, Kinzu. I think he can go out and open his own restaurant." Glancing at Wang Ming, who was still busy, Zhu Mengyo exclaimed sincerely. Kinzu curled his lips and said helplessly, "Let him open a restaurant. It's such a big deal to ask him to cook this meal for us. This guy will be more active in cooking for himself." Everyone chatted casually while eating. I don't know if it was to give Kinzu face, but Lin Zhu actually kept her work today and didn't chase them to drink. This also made the men who had been worried all the time breathe a sigh of relief. Several people looked at each other, and suddenly a famous saying popped up in their hearts. "It's not that the Imperial Army is incompetent, but that the enemy is too powerful." The meal took more than an hour, and everyone was satisfied, of course, except for the fat man who was slumped on the lounge chair. Third brother, we have been out at sea for half a day. The lunch is solved, but what about your fish for dinner? Liang held a toothpick in his mouth, lying on a lounge chair, basking in the sun on the deck. Bird, I'll fish for a while. If it doesn't work, just let'll catch our net. After a burp, Kinzu said nonchalantly, and everyone present had a few black lines on their foreheads. Is there such a spendthrift? It's fine to drive a fishing boat out to fish, but if you can't catch anything, you want to cast a net and catch our net. However, what they don't know is that when Kinzu first went out to sea, he planned to catch our net and bring it back. After all, he had to understand the approximate catch situation of the fishing ground first. Lying on the recline, feeling the warm sunshine, the soft sea breeze, and looking at the endless blue sea and the blue sky without a trace of clouds, Kinzu, who was full and satisfied, felt that his eyelids began to become a little heavy. It seems that since he didn't have to go to work, the whole person has become a little lazy. Yawning, Kinzu felt helpless about his change. Turning his head to look at the side, Zumengyu and Surui were looking at the sea on the side of the boat, whispering and laughing about something, pointing at him from time to time, and then the two of them laughed happily together. Lin Zhu, Wang Xiao and the girl named Zhao Qian were discussing some topics around the dining table, and the atmosphere seemed to be very good. As for the eldest and the fourth, they were spreading dog food in large quantities, not caring at all how much harm it would cause to him, a single dog. Huff, huff, huff. Well, Kinzu looked down and saw the two little guys lying next to him, snoring cutely. The little huskies were fed a few pieces of fish by Kinzu just now, and they ate them very enthusiastically. Then, after they were full, they lay down next to Kinzu, and it seemed that they were ready to find a place to have a good sleep to digest the food. Forcefully cheering himself up, Kinzu looked at Liang, who was chatting and laughing with Wulan, and asked, "Boss, do you guys still want to go fishing? If you want to go fishing, keep fishing. If not, we'll just drag the net back." "Why not? I just caught one fish, and I don't feel anything at all." Liang looked determined to go fishing, which made Kinzu want to laugh. "Okay, let's fish for a while, and then we have to go back early to pack up." Kinzu agreed, and after telling Wu a few more words, he ran to get his own fishing rod. "Thank you Anson Chen for your reward and subscription support, and take a rest. Today is the second update, and I'll take a break tomorrow. Liuun will update a few more chapters, please subscribe and reward. By the way, I recommend a book by a friend, a very stupid book. The title of the book is Magical Supply Marketing. Friends who are short of books can go and spray it. Chapter 188 Continuous Harvest. Please recommend and subscribe. Maybe there was a school of fish in this sea area, but Kinzu and his friends started to catch fish as soon as they cast their hooks. Third brother, did you see this big Atlantic cod? Bangming was holding up an Atlantic cod that was more than 60 centimeters long, showing off to Kinzu with a proud look on his face. As soon as he finished speaking, Kinzu pulled up a cod that was even bigger than his, which made him very depressed. He was not depressed yet, and he was attacked again. Second brother, look, how about this fish? With the sound of splashing, Liang held a cod that was still struggling in his hand and gestured to him. Frustrated, he handed the cod in his hand to Simon to deal with, and Wangmin cast the hook down again. Before he could sit down, he heard the sound of splashing water again. He turned his head and saw that Kinzu had thrown another Atlantic cod of 60 to 70 centimeters on the deck. "Boss, there should be a school of cod down there. Do you want to try to catch them?" Wu looked at the Atlantic cod that were thrown onto the deck one after another, smiled for a while, and introduced them to Kinzu. Kinzu was about to nod his head in agreement, but when he looked at Liang and others, who were all very interested, Kinzu held back and said, "Forget it, wait a little longer, let everyone play for a while, and we'll talk later." Wu nodded, said nothing more, and took the cod to deal with it. Looking into the distance, Kinzu suddenly lost his mind. The blue sea was boundless, and the white waves were lifted up by the breeze from time to time, and then fell gently, creating a dynamic and beautiful picture. The Dekino. One floated on that blue sea like that. The sky was still so blue, as if it was a lonely boat, away from the hustle and bustle of the world, existing alone between the blue sky and the blue sea. Old 3, what's wrong? Seeing Kinzu staring blankly after catching a cod, Bangming stopped casting and asked with concern. "It's okay, come on, continue." Shaking his head and putting aside his sudden thoughts, Kinzu smiled and threw off the hook and started a new round of fishing. As time went by, the harvest of several people increased. Even Surui, who was just there to do the bystander, caught a 20-pound Atlantic steelhead trout, which made her very happy. Why do you always catch good things? This is too weird. Tell me the truth. Did you cheat? Ironman looked at Kinzu and pulled up another big grouper from the sea, and muttered a little depressed. Kinzu smiled, took the blue grouper, which was more than 60 centimeters long, off the hook, put it in the net cage on the side, and waited for Will to come and take it away. This blue grouper is a little different from the golden grouper caught last time. This blue grouper has several orange-red spots on the lower part of its body, 6 dark brown vertical stripes on the sides of its body, the third and fourth bands are the widest, and only the tail fin has spots. That's a person's character, look at him. That steelhead trout is also quite valuable. Kinzu pointed to the Atlantic steelhead trout that Surui was holding in her hand for a photo, and teased Ironman with a smile. Steelhead trout is a migratory marine fish that is born in a river and grows in the sea. Every year when it comes to the spawning season, they will swim upstream, return to the river to lay eggs, and then return to the sea to grow. They are carnivorous fish, and like to eat fish, benthic animals, aquatic insects, and also plant debris. 1-year-old fish mainly eat zooplankton and benthic animals. Of course, these are all what Will told him. He always thought that trout were river fish native to the United States. When he helped Surui pull the fish up, he was surprised. Ironman looked at the poor steelhead trout and mourned for it. It was fine if it died. It would still be a good fish in 2 years. Why did you torture me? Alas. It seems that I am not the only one with bad character. Ironman looked around and felt much better. After all, among so many people fishing, only 2 people caught relatively precious sea fish. It was still acceptable. While he was sighing, Lan over there exclaimed excitedly. Turning his head, he saw a sea fish with a nearly flat body being pulled up from the sea by Liang. Damn, turbot. Looking at the strange-looking sea fish, Ironman couldn't help but sigh. What happened today? Good fish one after another. He knew this precious sea fish, which was famous in Europe, America, and China, without anyone introducing it. Turbot belongs to the class of bony fish, order of Poliorotus, family of Poliorotus, English name turbot, commonly known as European flounder, and in China it is called turbot or knot-spine flounder. It is native to the Atlantic Ocean of Europe and is recognized as one of the high-quality flounders in the world. The 2 most common ways to eat it in China are, that is, too busy to catch their own fish. Ironman and Kinzu came up to watch the fun. The turbot that Liang pulled onto the deck was about 1 meter long. He had spent a lot of effort to get this big guy up just now. The sides of the turbot are very flat, and the body is oval. The height is much shorter than the body length, about 34 centimeters. Both eyes are located on the left side of the head, and the body length is about 1.5 meters. The skin is brown and bare without scales. The mouth is large, and only the side of the eye is protruded by a bone smaller than the eye diameter. Most of the fin rays of the dorsal fin and anal fin are branched. Ha, how about it, Lao-san? This fish is pretty good, isn't it? Wiping off the dirt on his hands from catching this guy, Liang looked at Kinzu with pride, as if he had won 5 million. Kinzu pursed his lips and looked at Liang, who was showing off, and selectively ignored him. It's just shit luck. Didn't you see the bluefin tuna that brother caught this morning? Staring at the turbot that was still struggling on the ground. Kinzu was already thinking about how to eat it. This fish has a high content of gelatin, tastes delicious, is rich in nutrients, and has a good effect of moisturizing the skin and beautifying. Turbot is not new to Europeans. The fish species introduced into China are all found in Britain, France, and Germany. The ancient Romans had long regarded it as a delicacy and gave it the name pheasant of the sea. In Europe, due to its tender meat and fragrant taste, it is a good raw material for making fish steaks and fillets, and it has a great momentum to squeeze out the steak market. The general way to eat turbot is to steam it whole, which is a very traditional Cantonese way of eating. Europeans like to make turbot into fish fillets. Some restaurant chefs will remove the turbot meat and then steam the fish meat. For the sauce, they use the red wine sauce commonly used in Western cuisine. The 2 most common ways to eat turbot in China are steamed turbot with chopped pepper and fermented black beans, and steamed turbot. Thanks to Anson Chen and Jia122 for their reward subscription and monthly ticket support. Thank you. Today is the first update. Chapter 189 Return and Cast the Net. Second brother, well, it's up to you tonight. Steamed turbot with chopped pepper, TSK. Looking at the turbot in front of him, Kinzu said to Wang Min behind him without turning his head, as if he had already smelt the familiar aroma of chopped pepper. Wang Min nodded in agreement, and this time he did not refuse, and even swallowed his saliva exaggeratedly. Touching his already bloated stomach, he said with a hint of regret, "No problem, it's up to me tonight." "You guys," Li Yang was so angry that he couldn't speak. "My body worked hard to get this big guy up, and you guys don't praise it, so you start to study how to eat it now." The following people have harvested one after another, and Wang Min finally got what he wanted. He took great pains to get a sea base of more than 1 meter from the sea, which is not bad. Finally, after a few people counted, there were more than a dozen Atlantic cods of various sizes, and the largest one was 1 meter long, which was caught by Wang Xiao with the help of Lin Xiu. The smallest cod was only more than 20 centimeters long and was still a juvenile fish. Qin Zhu threw it back into the sea to let it continue to grow. In addition to turbot, blue grouper, and 5 or 6 large and small sea bass, the groups had a rich harvest today. The warm sunlight shone on the deck, and the few sea bass that had not been processed yet were shining in the sun. Perhaps they knew that their fish life was about to end, but they were still struggling in their death throes. After all, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, neither humans nor animals would wait to die. Da Hectares and Xiao Hectares, who had just taken a nap, were busy all the time, pressing this one and that one, almost like a spinning top, but the two little guys were still so happy. Qin Zhu, why are your pets completely different from you? You are lazy to death, but they're so diligent. Surui is not going to miss any opportunity to hit Qin Zhu now. Looking at the two overly active little huskies, she teased Qin Zhu. Come on, Lo Yesu. Have you ever seen a husky that is not lively? Qin Zhu smiled and took the two busy little guys who were a little dizzy, and with one sentence, he held back Surui's next words. Looking at the smug Qin Zhu, Surui gritted her teeth in anger. This guy is so hateful. He has been abroad for only a few days, but he has 2 foreign girls at home, and there are so many secrets. I don't know why Mingyo likes him. If Zhu Mingyo said that she was after money, she would never believe it. They are not the kind of people who lack money. Okay, we can go back and prepare. There will be others in the evening. Qin Zhu raised his wrist to check the time, and said with a smile to Li Yang and others who looked unsatisfied. Okay, then let's go back. Li Yang and others looked at each other and felt that they had enough fun, so they nodded in agreement. They were really happy today. Their friend circles were almost flooded with posts about their trip. They went out to sea for sea fishing, and the huge bluefin tuna and turbot were there. I don't know how many fishing enthusiasts envied them. Will, prepare to lower the net. Let's take one back and see what's going on. Qin Zhu instructed Will, who had just finished dealing with the cod. Okay, boss. After agreeing, Will walked directly to the cockpit and said to Simon, who was sitting next to him, Simon, raise the anchor and prepare to trawl the net. Simon hurriedly went to collect the anchor with Hubbard, while Aiden went to check the trawling net. With a dull whistle, the Tycoon one started moving again. The engine with more than 900 horsepower made a huge roar. The strong driving force made the seawater on the bottom of the sea surge. The snow-white Tycoon one turned diagonally on the sea and accelerated towards the manor. Get ready. Following Will's command, Aiden checked the operation of the machine for the last time, and then made an OK gesture to Will. Throw the net. At the command, Aiden pressed the button in his hand, and the net-throwing machine suddenly ejected, and the valuable trawl net drew a beautiful arc in the air. It was ejected directly. Because this time it was not specifically for fishing, Will did not turn on the ultrasonic fish finder, nor did he specifically look for any fish schools. He just followed the instructions and dragged it from here to the manor. If it was for fishing at sea, it would not be so simple to throw the net directly. It would also rely on the radar fish finder to find that fish school before casting the net, otherwise the probability of an empty net is not small. However, Qin Zhu was not very worried about the empty net. After all, one was on the high seas and the other was a fishing boat, which could not be compared. The high seas is such a vast place. If you drive a boat around casually, it is normal to have an empty net. Driven by the lead weight, the trawl slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. The friction generated by the contact between the trawl and the seawater caused the hull of the Tycoon one to pause slightly. So this is how fishing boats catch fish. I've learned something new. Looking at the trawl slowly sinking to the bottom of the sea, Wang Min exclaimed in admiration. What else do you think? Qin Zhu asked back with a little contempt, although it was also that first time he saw this scene. But Wang Min didn't buy it. He squinted his eyes and glanced at him. You talk as if you have seen it before. You just bought this fishing boat. I was told that you have seen fishing boats fishing in China. Touching his nose, Qin Zhu was speechless. Why did this guy's IQ improve today? But he didn't dare to say this out loud, otherwise he didn't know what this guy would say. The fishing boat moved quickly towards the manor, its snow-white hull splitting the blue sea, and the splashing waves hit the hull again, as if to avenge the guy who disturbed their sleep. Slowly, the speed of the fishing boat slowed down, and Qin Zhu was a little confused. It hadn't reached the manor yet, and the land was still not clear. Going up to the second deck, looking at Will, who turned on the ultrasonic fish finder in the cab, Qin Zhu asked in confusion, Will, what's wrong? Why did the speed of the boat slow down? Boss, look. There are too many fish, the net should have been dragged full, so the speed of the fishing boat slowed down. Will pointed to the dense green dots on the fish finder and explained to Qin Zhu. It's only been a short time, and the trawl net is full. Qin Zhu walked forward in surprise. He looked carefully at the screen of the ultrasonic fish finder, but there was nothing but a dense green. Looking at Will with a confused face, Qin Zhu was speechless. What do you mean by this? What do you want me to see? Thanks to the two big brothers 10 years old Worm and Xiao Langzi for their reward support, and to the book friend 150104222032239 for his monthly ticket support. Thank you for the encouragement and support of the book friends. Today is the second update. Chapter 190 The Legend of Cod, Subscription Request. Seeing Qin Zhu's puzzled expression, Will patted his head. He forgot that Qin Zhu was just a novice, so he introduced, Boss, this is an ultrasonic fish finder. It uses ultrasound to send out signals. After hitting a moving underwater object, the signal is reflected back. By calculating the time, direction and strength of the signal response, it can judge the underwater fish situation and display it on the screen through data conversion. Will, I understand these principles. What are those greens? Do they represent a school of fish? Qin Zhu interrupted Will's explanation with a confused look on his face. Why are you explaining this to me? I know the principles, but how does it process the information it feeds back? Does green represent a school of fish? Okay, boss, these greens represent fish. If you look closely, they are actually small green dots, but there are too many fish now, so they're squeezed together. Will explained with a smile, touching his messy blonde hair awkwardly. Okay, then what should we do now? Should we pull at the net? Qin Zhu looked carefully, but couldn't tell the difference between a piece and a dot, so he changed the subject helplessly. Well, set up the internet cafe. It's full. There's no point in delaying it. And it seems that the fishery is still reaching catches. Will nodded and suggested to Qin Zhu. Okay, then set up the internet cafe. I'll call everyone to help. Qin Zhu walked out of the cabin and came to the deck. He called Liang and Wang Ming and said, after eating and drinking, get ready to work. Simon found a few new one-piece bib-style waders from the cabin for them. They were made of waterproof fabric. Generally, fishermen wear one pair when they go out to sea. These pants are good. They are very stylish. Third brother, why didn't you take them out earlier? Wang Ming praised the oversized waders while struggling to put them on. It was not known whether he was praising the good quality of the pants or because they were in the size he could wear. Hey, why don't we have them? What if our clothes get dirty? Seeing that Simon only took a few sets of waders for the men present, Surui protested loudly. Just stay on the deck, you don't have to go over there. Qin Zhu looked at the girl with a frown on his face, wondering if he could save his trouble. No. We have to go and see too, Yo-yo, don't you think so? Surui ignored Qin Zhu's objection and pulled Zumengyo to protest. How could she not take her with her for such a fun thing? That's right, Qin Zhu, we have to go and see too. Sister Lan, don't you think so? Why don't you take us over to see it? Lin Zhu, who likes to watch the fun and is not afraid of trouble, also jumped out and pulled the big sister Lan to protest to Qin Zhu together. Seeing that Zumengyo and Wulan were all a little moved, Qin Zhu was completely helpless. Women, why are they so curious? He shouted to Simon and asked him to bring a few more sets of waders, one for each of the people present. After changing clothes, Qin Zhu led a few people to the rear deck. After everyone stopped, Simon gestured to Will. Seeing Simon's gesture, Will turned on the automatic winch. As well operated, the automatic winch on the deck began to turn slowly, driving the trawl net and slowly closing in on the fishing boat. Slowly, under the gaze of Kinzu and others, the trawl net immersed in the blue seawater was tightened little by little, and moved closer to the deck little by little. And the group of white sea fish was also looming in the seawater. Damn, this is simply too spectacular. Trawlers are really a huge progress in the history of human development. Ironman looked at the large group of various large fish struggling desperately in the fishing net, and said with some sighs, "Yes, it is progress for human beings, but it is a disaster for marine fish." Kinzu sighed, and recalled what all had said to him. He said to everyone, "Do you know? In the past, on the west coast, when the cod fishing season came, people could walk on their backs. The whole sea was full of silver cod. It was a spectacular scene." "No way. Is it really that exaggerated?" Everyone was shocked, and Surui couldn't help asking. She couldn't imagine the scene of cod everywhere. "It's true. I checked the old information. The fish in the ocean at the time could be described as flooding. You can see groups of cod everywhere, swimming freely in the sea. However, since the Viking period, when Nordic fishermen began to catch cod on a large scale, that kind of grand occasion has never appeared again." Kinzu's voice seemed to have a magical power, making everyone silent. Every progress of mankind seems to represent the extinction of other species. Our Mother Earth can't seem to accommodate too many creatures. Not only cod, but also various marine fish that used to be rampant have almost become extinct due to human overfishing. Although humans have belatedly introduced various protection regulations, how can the Pandora's box that has been opened be so easy to cover? People are used to enjoying their deliciousness, so how can they stop killing them just for protection? Including himself, eating these delicacies, isn't it also a pleasure? No buying and selling, no killing, what a realistic sentence. "Boss, you guys make way, the trawl is coming up." Simon's voice interrupted everyone's contemplation, and Kinzu quickly led a few people to withdraw to the side. At this time, the trawl had been dragged to the stern, completely revealing its true face. A long trawl was filled with white sea fish, and the sea fish on the arm kept struggling and twisting in the fishing net. The direct consequence of the previous excessive fishing is that the mesh size of the trawl nets is now larger, so from time to time, young marine fish fall out of the huge mesh size and return to the sea. This can be regarded as a contribution to the sustainable development of the ocean. Simon had already opened a hole in the stern, and the automatic conveyor had begun to operate, assisting the winch to drag the large group of white and constantly twisting marine fish onto the fishing boat. After the trawl net was all up, Simon signaled to Will in the cab, and Will turned off the automatic winch. After setting the fishing boat to automatic driving, Will jumped out of the cab and looked at the marine fish piled up on the rear deck, which looked like a small mountain, and smiled with satisfaction. "Boss, this net probably has several thousand kilograms, and they are basically Atlantic cod of good value. At least the fuel cost of this trip to the sea has been earned back. Today's third update, for what I don't know about being strong, I rely on stubbornness to add more, for Chapter 191 catch. What? So many fish, but only enough to cover the fuel cost of the fishing boat today." Liang exclaimed when he heard Will say that. "No way, how much fuel can be used for such a short distance?" "Of course, you have to know that this big guy, although its functions are great, it consumes a lot of fuel," Will explained to Liang with a smile. TSK, Lao-san, no wonder they say that going out to sea is a game for rich people. Your casual trip to the sea is enough for more than a month's salary for my body. Liang looked at Kinzu with a calm face and sighed. Kinzu smiled and said, "It's not that exaggerated. It's just that there are too many things on the fishing boat, so it consumes a lot of fuel. Besides, can't the fuel it consumes be earned back? Although this trip consumed a few $1,000s in fuel, this net of fish was enough for him to run several times. Compared with this place at his doorstep, it was not too far away. Moreover, he didn't care much about that little money. Seeing the hope of making money and earning points was the most satisfying thing for him now." Seeing Simon preparing to untie the rope at the bottom of the trawl, Kinzu quickly called a few people to help. Although the winch looked easy to pull with such a large trawl of fish, you will feel how much pressure it is when you really try to do it. With Simon's hands exerting force, the opening at the bottom of the trawl was opened. With a wow sound, the sea fish in the trawl poured out and piled up on the deck like a small mountain. Moreover, these guys were not only jumping around, but Kinzu also saw an unknown big fish over 2 meters long, which directly swallowed a mackerel that was 20 to 30 centimeters long and as thick as an arm. It's really spectacular. Liang looked at the fish pouring out and couldn't help but swear. Yeah, it's so shocking. How long would it take to eat these fish? Wang Ming would never forget to eat at any time. Li Qiang and Wang Xiao just watched with Qin Zhu in a daze, unable to say a word. As for the girls, including Zhu Mingguo, no one spoke. What were they doing? Taking pictures. Qin Zhu stared at the pile of sea fish in front of him without blinking, and he felt that his eyes were almost not enough. Among the pile of sea fish in front of him, some fish were extremely huge, more than 2 meters long, and probably weighed hundreds of kilograms. And some fish looked strange, with bright colors and beautiful divisions, which make people hungry at first sight. He even saw a huge turtle and some messy shells, which also poured onto the deck along with the sea fish. Boss, you take everyone to sort these fish, throw turtle shells and other things into the sea, and pay attention to whether there are precious seafood. Some seafood should be kept in the seawater tank. If they die, it will be bad. Will looked at the dazed Qin Zhu and couldn't help but whispered a reminder beside him, you are here to help, not to watch. After we'll set this, Qin Zhu reacted, and quickly pushed the guys around him, picked up the bucket used to hold the fish and rushed to the pile of fish. But although he rushed fast enough, he was a little confused when he got to the fish pile. Classification. How to classify. I know about precious seafood, but it doesn't know me. Qin Zhu scolded Will in his heart. Didn't he know that I, the boss, was a marine novice? But he really wronged Will. Seeing that he was so familiar with turbot today, Will thought Qin Zhu knew about these things. He took a rough look at the catch today. There were no particularly precious marine fish. In addition, the fishing boat still needed someone to steer, so Will reminded Qin Zhu and returned to the cab. It was Simon who looked up inadvertently and discovered Qin Zhu's embarrassment. He smiled and took the bucket in his hand and said, Boss, come, today I will introduce these marine fish to you. Qin Zhu breathed a sigh of relief. At the critical moment, Simon was still reliable. Well, not bad, go back and get a raise. With a few people carrying buckets, they surrounded the pile of fish like a small mountain, ready to listen to Simon's introduction. Aiden and Hubbard, on the other side, began to quickly pick up sea fish. Introducing one person was enough, and they still needed to work. Simon, is this a barracuda? Wang Ming grabbed a large green fish that was more than 1 meter long and asked Simon. Yes, this is a barracuda. The barracuda has round scales on its body, the back is blue-gray, the belly is light gray, and the scales on both sides have black vertical stripes. It is a nearshore fish. They like to live in river estuaries and bays, and may also enter freshwater rivers. They are very lively, very good at jumping, and often swim upstream in groups in the upstream. Simon obviously knew a lot about these fish. He opened his mouth and talked about it non-stop. Qin Zhu and others were confused when they heard it. After listening to Simon's introduction in confusion, Wang Ming glanced at the deck and found that there were quite a lot of barracudas, so he asked a question that Qin Zhu was most concerned about. Simon, are these barracudas expensive? Not very expensive, retail is only a few dollars per pound, and it's even cheaper if we wholesale. Simon sighed. This is also the reason why more and more fishermen have lost their jobs in recent years. A trip to the sea consumes a lot of fuel, but the fish caught cannot be sold at a high price. Fortunately, he is relatively lucky. He followed Will at first, and just lost his job and followed Qin Zhu, a generous boss, so his life is relatively comfortable. Hey, Simon, aren't you going to stay with the turtle? It looks very good. Qin Zhu couldn't help asking curiously as Simon was about to push the big turtle into the sea. This kind of turtle has 2 pairs of forehead scales on its top. The snout is flattened laterally, the front end of the upper jaw is hooked and eagle-like, the carapace shields are arranged in a covering shape, the surface is smooth, with brown and light yellow patterns, the limbs are flipper-shaped, the forelimbs have 2 claws, and the tail is short and does not show outside the carapace. Boss, it looks like a turtle, but it's actually a hawksbill turtle. They are listed in the CITES list as endangered species, so we usually release them after we catch them. Do you want to keep them? From Simon's words, we can see the protection of wild animals in the United States. In the United States, although wild animals cannot be killed, there is nothing that cannot be kept. Including the tigers raised by the former boxing champion, his own harpy eagle, and some rare animals raised by some celebrities, they are all endangered species, but as long as you don't abuse them or kill them, then no one will come to trouble you. This is the difference in national conditions. In China, if you keep a tiger, there will be someone from the zoo to pick it up the next day. And it's free of charge. At the time, you can only think that you are unlucky. If they don't sue you for illegal poaching of wild animals, it's considered merciful. Thank you 13691115006 for that 2 monthly tickets. In the new week, please subscribe, recommend and reward to support. Chapter 192 Show Off. As Simon explained, Kinzu and his friends gradually understood a little, so they also began to learn to sort. Because this time, except for pike, all the catches were Atlantic cod, and occasionally a few sea bass. There were no other precious sea fish. So after Kinzu and his friends understood how to sort, their speed was not slow. After working for more than half an hour, the sea fish were classified, packed and weighed. There were a total of 2,500 kilograms of pike, more than 800 kilograms of Atlantic cod, and only more than 500 kilograms of sea bass. In total, today's net harvested 3,800 kilograms of sea fish. Even if all were sold at the minimum price of $3, it would be more than $10,000. Not to mention today's fuel cost, even if you run back and forth twice, it would be enough. Together, they carried all the sea fish to the cold storage room and refrigerated them. After returning, Simon and his friends were responsible for cleaning the deck, while Kinzu and his friends, who had nothing to do, began to help clean up the marine garbage that was caught in the net. Simon was originally going to push these marine garbage back into the sea, which was so easy. But he was stopped by Simon. "Wang, we have to pack up these garbage and take them back to dispose of them. We can't just throw them into the sea." "Why?" Simon was a little confused. It was so easy, why did he have to take them back to dispose of them? "Because these are marine garbage, because these are marine garbage. When there are too many of them, the pollution to the seawater is too serious. So when we go out to sea to fish, we will take these garbage back to dispose of them. It can also be regarded as a contribution to purifying the marine environment." Simon sighed and didn't say anything more. The reason why the marine environment is getting worse and worse and many marine life are on the verge of extinction is inseparable from these marine garbage. Why do long-lived guys like hawksbill turtles become endangered animals? The main reason is their diet. Their favorite food is aquatic life such as jellyfish. But because there are too many marine garbage, these guys often mistake plastic bags for jellyfish and eat them. But their digestive system can't digest these plastic bags, and they can only die painfully in the end. And these marine garbage are all created and discarded by humans themselves, so it has to be said that this is also a kind of self-inflicted suffering. The environment of the ocean is getting worse and worse, the living space of fish is getting smaller and smaller, the fisheries are closing down one after another, and the fishermen have to go home without jobs. After listening to Simon's words, Simon nodded thoughtfully. He has also seen this kind of news on domestic TV. Some unscrupulous manufacturers directly discharge sewage and garbage into the ocean, and often cause large-scale red tides. Now it seems that this phenomenon exists not only in China, but also in the world. After Simon finished speaking, he continued to be busy. They also had to organize and clean the trawl nets for use next time they went out to sea. When the one slowly approached the dock, it was already past 4 in the afternoon. It took them about 6 or 7 hours to go out to sea, but Kinzu and his friends did not rush to say how tired they were. "Kinzu, didn't I hear that you can go diving when you go out to sea? When are we going to go diving?" Watching the fishing boat slowly approach the dock and stop steadily, Surui remembered the most important purpose of this trip. She came here mainly to play diving. Kinzu was stunned when he heard this, and slapped his thigh suddenly. "Yes, how could I forget this, diving? What is diving?" Kinzu secretly glanced at Zumengyo's graceful figure, and gave a standard answer in his heart. "Diving equals bikini." Turning his head to look at Surui with a face full of longing, Kinzu hated it. "You didn't say it when you were on the boat, but you remembered it when you returned to the dock." He raised his wrist to check the time. It was impossible to go now. After sighing in his heart, he smiled and said, "Next time, can you dive? When will I take you out to sea again?" "I can." Surui was the first to raise her white and tender little hand high. She didn't know how to dive. Well, I guess she did. After all, she had been taught by the coach in the tourist area last time. Zumengyo thought for a long time and weakly raised her hand. Well, she and Surui are best friends, so of course she knows a little bit. Liang and the others looked at each other. Although the expectation in their eyes showed that they were also interested, they really couldn't do it. "Hey, Will, do you all know how to dive?" Kinzu asked knowingly when he saw Will coming down from the parked fishing boat. Of course, boss. Have you ever seen a fisherman who can't dive? Will said to Kinzu with a hint of sarcasm, casually putting the wet towel on his shoulders with a smile. Well, I haven't seen it, or rather, I've only seen you fishermen. Kinzu shrugged helplessly and replied with a smile, then continued. It's like this, a few of my friends are very interested in diving. If you have time, you can teach them. No problem, but we still have to buy some diving equipment, oxygen cylinders and so on. These ships don't have them. Will smiled and agreed to accompany Kinzu down the gangway, and then called John and others who had been waiting here for a long time to go to the refrigerated cabin to move the catch out. Seeing them busy, Kinzu took Zumengyo and the others back to the villa first. After all, he was the boss and didn't have to do physical work together. Oh. By the way, there are two little guys. Looking at the little husky playing on the beach in front, Kinzu felt that his life now was particularly beautiful, with sunshine, beaches, sea and cruise ships, and fishing boats. Especially, there are brothers and people he likes. Turning his head to look at Zumengyo's beautiful and moving face, Kinzu was deeply intoxicated by it. Back at the villa, the little husky jumped in with its short legs, and when it saw little Jerry on the sofa, the two guys ran over with their mouths wide open, barking a few times, and were very proud to share today's happiness with this little friend who had no chance to go out to sea. Little Jerry responded with a few squeaks, and there was a strong envy in his voice. When he saw Kinzu coming in, he immediately left the two guys who were showing off. Jumping a few times, it came to Kinzu's side, and climbed onto his shoulders by pulling his trouser legs a few times. It squeaked at him, as if accusing him of not taking it with him when he went out to play. Helplessly, Kinzu gently stroked the big furry tail of little Jerry and comforted him a few words. The reason why Kinzu didn't bring this guy was that he was afraid that it would jump around on the boat. If it accidentally jumped into the sea, it would be a lot of fun. After a long time and comforting, the little guy finally calmed down, and the people around him laughed non-stop. Especially Wang Ming. He laughed the happiest. Thanks to Jia 122 and Fengxi for their support. Today is the second update. Please give me a reward and subscription. The subscription is so bleak. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 193 The beer is gone, please subscribe. Wang sat down on the soft leather sofa in the living room, picked up a big apple on the coffee table, took a big bite, and said to Kinzu while eating, "Third brother, your family status needs to be improved. Such a little thing dares to yell at you." "Yes. It seems that the third brother will be a henpecked husband in the future. Don't you think so, fourth brother?" Liang secretly winked at Zumengyo's back and started to tease her. Kinzu curled his lips helplessly, holding little Jerry, and walked upstairs, raising his sleeves to smell as he walked. "I said, don't you think it's fishy? Second brother, you can still eat it, I admire you." After Kinzu said this, everyone realized that they were all smelling fishy after playing at sea for a day. Especially the girls, they all ran upstairs at a speed that made Kinzu a little stunned. Wang Ming, who was chewing an apple, also raised his hand to smell the smell on his body. As a result, a fishy smell came, which almost made him faint. He quickly stuffed the half-eaten apple into little Jerry's arms, and reluctantly stood up from the soft sofa, preparing to go upstairs to take a shower and change clothes. Little Jerry was a little confused when he suddenly had a big apple in his arms, but when he saw that it was chewed by the fat man, the little guy was a little disgusted, and he raised his paws and threw it back. Looking at the big apple that hit him in astonishment, Wang Ming screamed strangely, and scared little Jerry so much that he rolled off the sofa and fell on his butt. "Old third, is your squirrel a spirit? How can it throw such a big apple?" Regardless of his painful arm, Wang Ming pointed at little Jerry, who jumped back on the sofa, looked at Kinzu, and asked with some stammering, "Oh, this is a mutant species. It was like this when I brought it back." Kinzu looked at the people who were curiously staring at him, and said calmly, so calm that people couldn't tell that he was lying. Scratching his head in confusion, Wang Ming was a little confused. "Is this really the case?" "Yes." "Well, why don't you wash it quickly? You still have to be busy later." Nodding with certainty, Kinzu directly changed the subject and urged the people to move faster. Looking at each other, Liang and Wang Ming both spread their hands helplessly. It is true that there is a kind of owner, and there is a kind of pet. When they went upstairs, Qinzu remembered that Daha and Xiaohe had been crazy all day today, and their bodies were covered with seawater. Don't let them stain your sofa. Standing upstairs, he whistled softly. Daha and Xiaohe downstairs cleverly pricked up their ears and looked around. Is there no one? Qinzu looked at this and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The two huskies had no choice but to whistle again. The two guys finally saw Qinzu, and immediately moved their four short legs and ran upstairs happily. TSK, what a smart little guy. Luckily Lan is not here, otherwise she will definitely get one when she goes back. Liang looked at Daha and Xiaohe who were sticking their butts out and climbing the stairs hard, and sighed to Wang Ming next to him with some relief. He didn't love these little guys too much. They were cute when they were cute, but they were also very troublesome when they were troublesome. He nodded in agreement. For Wang Ming, his point of view of judging whether a cat is cute or not is to judge whether it tastes good or not. Qinzu didn't know what the two guys were thinking, otherwise he would have let Ha take the fat guy, the foodie, away. When he got to the bathroom, Qinzu first put some warm water in the bathtub, and then carried Daha and her in. EG6F. EME. Pounds. P. We. HEYA9. UU dollars. Pounds. Qinzu rubbed their little heads and drove them out of the bathroom. When Qinzu finished washing and went downstairs, the living room was empty, except for the bored little Jerry on a sofa and the two little huskies rolling around on the carpet. However, they were not considered human beings. Walking into the living room, Qinzu sat on the soft sofa and handed 2 pine nuts to little Jerry as compensation for not taking him out to play. Looking at Eva who was busy in the kitchen preparing ingredients for the evening barbecue patient, Qinzu gave this big foreign horse a thumbs up in his heart, and then suddenly remembered something, so he asked, "Hey, Eva, how is the preparation going? Is there enough beer at home for the evening?" "Oh, boss, the meat is almost ready, just waiting for John to bring some seafood. By the way, there doesn't seem to be much beer at home. The last patient used up almost all of it. Since you don't usually drink it, I didn't buy it." Eva turned around, wiped her forehead gently with her arm, and said apologetically, "It's okay. Where's Dale? Let her go to Revere to get some back." Waving his hand, Qinzu took a bunch of grapes from the coffee table and ate them while talking casually. "Okay, my sister went to help Uncle John with herding today. I'll call her over now." Eva wiped her hands and was about to take out her cell phone to call Dale. "Well, forget it. I'll go by myself later." Qinzu was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Dale to really go to herd. Isn't this a waste? However, it seems that there is really nothing to do except herding. Seeing Eva want to call her back, he smiled and waved his hand to stop her. "Forget it. It's such a short distance. Instead of waiting for her to come back from the pasture, it's better to run there by yourself." Little Jerry, who was eating pine nuts, saw the grapes in Qinzu's hand and didn't even want the pine nuts in his hand. He came up curiously. In his memory, this kind of fruit seems to be delicious. Looking at the little guy's black eyes, staring at the grapes in his hand, Qinzu smiled and picked one and handed it to him. "This is not a blueberry, don't you like it? Today is the 3rd update. I don't know how to be strong, I just rely on perseverance to add more." 5. Chapter 194 Pika Pika. What Qinzu didn't expect was that after little Jerry took the grapes, he held them with his 2 little paws and put them directly into the pink little mouth. After smacking his mouth a few times, this guy used his little paws to catch them and actually spit out 2 small grape seeds. "You guy, you're outrageous." Seeing this guy handing over the spited grape seeds, Qinzu rubbed his cute little head and scolded him with a smile. "What's wrong?" Qinzu. Zhu Mengyo, who had just come down from upstairs, rubbed her long black hair and sat next to Qinzu. After hearing his scolding, she asked curiously. Hearing the voice, Qinzu turned his head and looked at Zhu Mengyo who was sitting next to him. After taking a bath, she changed into a simple plain waist dress. Although it was simple, the waist design perfectly showed her small waist that could be held in one hand. The delicate facial features, although not made up, still looked so charming. And her long black hair, casually scattered on her chest, highlighted her fair and moist skin. "It's okay. I just found out that this little guy actually eats grapes. What's even more annoying is that after eating the grapes, it gave me the grape seeds." Kinzu pointed to the 2 grape seeds on the coffee table and said with a smile, "Hey, don't squirrels eat berries?" Stopping fiddling with her black hair, Zumengyo looked at Kinzu strangely. Really? Kinzu touched his nose. He only remembered that squirrels can eat blueberries, but he didn't know anything else. Yes, squirrels eat a lot of food, including pine nuts, nuts, melon seeds, peanuts, hazelnuts, walnuts, apples, chestnuts, milk, watermelons, walnuts, carrots, bread, wheat, and berries. These are all in its diet. Looking at Zumengyo counting the squirrel's food one by one with her fingers, Kinzu felt a little curious. He felt a little dizzy listening to it. How did her little head remember it? How do you know so much? Kinzu looked at Zumengyo, who was still counting, and couldn't help being curious, so he asked directly. After a slight pause, Zumengyo said a little embarrassedly, I used to raise a little squirrel, but, in the end, Well, Kinzu understood it immediately, and looked at Zumengyo, who was a little embarrassed. He didn't expect that this girl who looked gentle and virtuous could not raise a small animal. What are you looking at? That was when I was in high school. Wasn't I still a child at the time? Zumengyo, who was a little uncomfortable being looked at by Kinzu, directly broke out in a small temper. Ahem, well, Mengyo, I'm going to Revere to buy some beer. Do you want to come with me? Seeing that Zumengyo, who was always gentle, broke out in a small temper, Kinzu decisively changed the subject. Okay, let's go. I'll go back and change my shoes first. Sure enough, as the topic changed, Zumengyo also shifted her attention and nodded and agreed very straightforwardly. By the way, she changed into a pair of light shoes. After Zumengyo went upstairs, Kinzu looked at little Jerry, who was still looking at him eagerly on the coffee table, and smiled as he stuffed a whole bunch of grapes into the guy's arms, and smiled and said, "You guy, I'll give it all to you, but you can't eat too much, do you hear me?" Seeing it nodding its head as if it understood, Kinzu patted his clothes and stood up. Eva, I'm going to Revere first. When John brings the fish over, you can handle it first, leaving a sea base and a large turbot for Wanming to handle. Okay, boss, I got it. Nodding curiously, although Eva didn't know why the guests had to cook by themselves, she still agreed. Kinzu didn't explain, he went straight out to the garage and drove out the mighty Ford F-750. To haul things, a pickup truck is still practical. This car is so damn cool. I say, third brother, how many good things do you have left? Take them out and show them to your brothers. As soon as the car arrived at the gate of the villa, before Zumengyo had time to get in, the fat man who came out with them couldn't help but jump up. Nothing. These are just a few broken cars. There are no good things. Kinzu said modestly, but the smug expression on his face could not be concealed. Damn. Raising the middle finger at this guy, Wanming stroked the handsome car body and said with some envy, "Come on, third brother, drive it for a spin and have fun. Don't worry, we'll be here soon, you guys go and mess with that one, I'm going to take this car to Revere." Kinzu decisively stopped this guy's thoughts. What a joke, brother still needs it. No, where are you going? I'll take you there. The fat man still didn't want to give up. He didn't want to get off the car now. Although people say that fat men don't have any hobbies other than eating, that depends on the person. Kinzu glanced at the guy and asked lightly, "Oh, do you have a driver's license?" Yes. When Wanming heard this, he thought, it's possible. He patted his chest quickly. After all, he is an experienced driver. How could he not have a driver's license? Oh, what about this? Glancing at the guy, Kinzu took out a brand new American driver's license from his arms and handed it to Wanming next to him. Well, I don't have this one. Looking at the driver's license Kinzu took out, Wanming suddenly wilted. He remembered that this is in the United States, and experienced drivers are useless. Kinzu patted the guy's fat shoulder and smiled to comfort him. It's okay, we'll come later, you drive that one, drive it on the ranch, no one will care about you, I will drive this car first. I'm doing business. As he said that, Kinzu called Zumengyo, who was watching the excitement on the side, and prepared to get in the car and leave. Wanming on the side finally reacted, and couldn't help but raise his middle finger to the guy's back. What driver's license or not, it's just delayed you from picking up girls. However, when it came to getting in the car, something embarrassing happened. Well, how about I help you get in? Kinzu rubbed his hands and looked at Zumengyo, who was standing at the door of the car with expectation. No. Subconsciously shaking her head, Zumengyo felt that she really encountered all the embarrassing things of this year today. it's okay, come on, I'll help you get in. Kinzu approached the little sheep step by step, with an indescribable charm in his tone. Well, let's not do it. Zumengyo was a little shaken, and struggled for a while, wondering whether to do it or not. Come on, come quickly, it will be dark if you don't go now. The power of temptation in Kinzu's tone became stronger, and even carried an unknown sense of oppression. Well, okay. After gritting her teeth, Zumengyo, the little sheep, finally gave in. Thanks to Ants and Chen and many years later BJ for their rewards and support, and to book friends 136911500, Gia 122, 10 years old Bug, and book friends 14,944 and 32. Thanks to the monthly ticket support of several big people in the lonely Dongxin. Chapter 195. It's hard to get on the bus. Kinzu smiled and walked forward. Well, Mingyo, hold the handle first. Yes, that's it. Seeing her firmly grasp the door handle of the Ford F750, Kinzu continued. Come on, lift your feet and put them on the pedals. Yes, don't be afraid, no one will see. Helplessly holding down the hem of her skirt with one hand to prevent it from running around, Zumengyo now hated herself to death. Why did she only bring a few dresses with her when she went out for a trip? She was originally planning to go shopping for clothes after coming here, but now she was embarrassed. She turned her head and rolled her eyes at this guy. He must have done it on purpose. Yes, he did it on purpose. He obviously had two small cars, but he didn't drive such a big weird car, and now she couldn't even get in. Kinzu didn't care so much, although he didn't do it on purpose, but it was useless to say it now, so he should take advantage of it first. Seeing Zumengyo put one foot on the pedal, Kinzu laughed wickedly. He stretched out his claws like an Lushan. Kinzu's sudden force actually frightened Zumengyo, who was in a state of tension. In a panic, she didn't have time to hold the handrail firmly, and her whole body fell backwards. Suddenly startled, Kinzu quickly reached out and caught Zumengyo, who was lying on her back. Mengyo, how are you okay? Seeing Zumengyo's face turn pale in an instant, Kinzu asked with concern. No, it's okay. After a while, Zumengyo finally woke up from the panic. Looking at Kinzu's concerned eyes, she quickly shook her head and stood up. Kinzu felt a sense of loss in his heart. But seeing that the beauty was safe and sound, he still breathed a sigh of relief. Zumengyo patted her gently beside her for a long time, and then she stood on the pedal again under Kinzu's expectant eyes. She gently covered the hem of her skirt with her hands, turned her head proudly and looked at Kinzu, who was disappointed under the car, and snorted. Do you think this lady doesn't know what you are up to? Why? Why don't you hurry up and get going? Didn't you say the time is running out? Oh, I'll come. After hearing Zumengyo's words, Kinzu came back to her senses from disappointment, responded quickly, and walked towards the cab. This girl looks so gentle and virtuous, but I didn't expect that she would be so cunning. It's a pity to waste such a good opportunity. Pulling the handle, Kinzu easily climbed onto the driver's seat, looking at Zumengyo, who was sitting in the co-pilot seat with a smug smile on her face, and leaned over directly. What are you doing? Zumengyo was startled and quickly grabbed her hands and took it away. At this time, the disadvantages of the large body and large space design of the Ford F750 were reflected. Because Kinzu had already stretched out his hand, he couldn't reach Zumengyo, who was hiding behind. Kinzu looked at Zumengyo, who was looking at him with a worried look, and rolled his eyes pretending to be helpless, saying, What are you doing? I'm just helping you fasten your seatbelt. Why are you hiding so far away? Zumengyo looked at Kinzu speechlessly, and her face, which had originally returned to normal, suddenly became red again. Looking at the smug smile on his lips, Zumengyo immediately understood that this guy was doing it on purpose again. After glaring at this bad guy fiercely, Zumengyo couldn't help but stretched out her hand and twisted him. Seeing Kinzu's dodging look in pain, she finally let go of her jade hand and sat up straight in the passenger seat. See if you dare to bully me again in the future, even rabbits will bite when they are angry. Not to mention people. Kinzu was really helpless now. He got himself into trouble by cheating others. He smiled bitterly and looked at Zumengyo, who looked nonchalant. This girl must have learned it from Surui. Yes, definitely. At this time, Surui, who was helping Eva prepare the barbecue for the evening, suddenly sneezed for no reason. Seeing that everyone looked up at her, Surui smiled embarrassedly. Well, it's okay, it must be Kinzu who scolded me. How could it be, Rui? You should put on more clothes, don't catch a cold from the sea breeze today. As a new good sister, Lan reminded her with concern. Yes, Sister Rui, you should put on more clothes quickly, it will be bad if you catch a cold. Lin Zhu put down the cotton meat in her hand and looked at Surui with concern. Okay, it may be because of the sea breeze today. It seems that I have caught a cold. I will put on more clothes. After being told by everyone, Surui herself was a little nervous. Don't really catch a cold, otherwise what should I do when I go diving in the sea later? So she said hello, washed her hands, and ran upstairs directly. Qinzu didn't know what happened at home at this time. He looked at Zhu Mengyo's cute little appearance and smiled helplessly. Forget it, let you be proud for a few days, but don't let it fall into my hands. He possessed himself again. Zhu Mengyo didn't say much this time. She just stared at Qinzu tightly to prevent the bad guy from taking advantage of her again. Qinzu looked at her alert look and curled his lips. Really, am I such a person? Although sometimes. Well, occasionally. But Qinzu will not let this little woman look down on him. You're alert, right? I just want to be honest for once. Qinzu pulled the seatbelt quietly and fastened it for Zhu Mengyo directly. His hands didn't even touch her body. When Qinzu turned around and sat down, Zhu Mengyo's eyes flashed with a trace of relief, but with a little disappointment. She didn't want Qinzu to be the kind of playboy type, but seeing that he was honest, she began to doubt herself. So, women, you can never guess. Chapter 196. It's hard to get off. Subscription request. Today is a good day. We ordinary people are so happy today. Humming a made-up and out-of-tune ditty. Qinzu was in a good mood and drove the Ford Raptor, speeding on the ranch road. He was throttled all the way. The youngest cattle that were leisurely eating fresh grass on the ranch were frightened by the sudden roar and looked up and around, thinking that some beasts were coming and ready to escape at any time. Qinzu, who was in high spirits, didn't know what Zhu Mengyo was thinking now, otherwise he would not be in such a good mood. However, it was good this way. There is an old saying that goes, don't try to guess a woman's mind. You can't guess it no matter how much you guess. You never know when her mind will change again. Even after getting on the interstate highway, Qinzu didn't slow down and continued to throttle. On the interstate highway with a speed limit of 70 miles, he directly sped up to 110 miles per hour. Zhu Mengyo, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was so scared that her face turned pale. She wanted to remind him to slow down several times, but seeing Qinzu concentrating on driving, she didn't say anything. It was not until another car appeared in front of the Ford Raptor that Qinzu slowed down a little. Just when Zhu Mengyo breathed a sigh of relief, she heard Qinzu's muttering in her ear. A good dog doesn't block the road. You're driving a sports car, how come you can even catch up with my pickup truck? Looking at the pink Maserati in front, Qinzu curled his lips in dissatisfaction. Not only did he not reflect on his behavior of driving a pickup truck, but he blamed the sports car for running slowly. After driving behind the Maserati for a while, Qinzu was really impatient, so he stepped on the accelerator directly. The wild engine of the Ford Raptor made a roaring sound, driving this steel monster and rushing up all the way. At this time, in the pink Maserati, two blonde, blue-eyed, hot white girls were looking at each other in bewilderment at the Ford Raptor going away. At this time, the white girl in the passenger seat looked at the speedometer and murmured, Rui the 11th, am I dazzled? How is it possible? How could we have a pickup truck explode? Fuck, is this country bumpkin crazy? How dare he drive so fast? Staring at the speed limit sign on her dashboard, the owner of the pink Maserati, the blonde, blue-eyed and hot Rui the 11th, couldn't help but swear. When the Ford Raptor stopped at the door of the Twilight Bar, Zhu Mengyo in the passenger seat had time to glare at Qinzu fiercely. You did it on purpose, right? Why are you driving so fast? No, what, aren't you in a hurry? Qinzu was about to say that it was because he was too happy, but after looking at Zhu Mengyo's unfriendly face, he still didn't dare to say it out loud. Zhu Mengyo was so angry. She wanted to remind him to drive slower several times in the car, but seeing the speed, she didn't dare to speak. If she distracted him, it would be no joke. Ahem, I'll pay attention next time and promise not to drive fast. Let's get off. Qinzu, who was a little scared by Zhu Mengyo's stare, said quickly. After saying that, he opened the door and got off without waiting for her to object, and came to the passenger door, waiting for her to get off. Looking at Qinzu, who was waiting for her to throw herself into his arms, Zhu Mengyo was embarrassed and angry, and couldn't help but said coquettishly, Get out of the way, I can get off by myself. No, Mengyo, it's so high, what if you fall? I'll pick you up from below. Kinzu pretended to be serious and spread his arms below, as if he was really afraid that she would fall. Seeing that someone outside had noticed the situation here, Mengyo stomped her feet helplessly, holding the handrail, and tried to step on the pedal. After her foot tested the position of the pedal, she confidently took the other foot over. But when she took the other foot, she didn't know where her skirt was caught, and her foot stumbled and fell directly down. Kinzu was just pretending to be down there. The pedals of this Ford Raptor are a bit high. Although it is a bit difficult to get on the car, it is still no problem to get off the car. Unexpectedly, this time it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Looking at Mengyo, who fell into his arms, feeling the wonderful touch of the warm and fragrant jade in his arms, Kinzu looked up at the sky. This time he really didn't take advantage on purpose. Are you okay? Didn't fall down? Looking at Mengyo with a red face in his arms, Kinzu asked with concern. It's okay, let's go in. Shaking her head, Mengyo quickly left the embrace that made her a little addicted. She was already wondering if this guy was her nemesis. Since she had been alone with him, nothing good had happened. She fell once when she got on the car. The time, it could be said that he moved suddenly and she didn't react, but now she fell again when she got off the car. If someone didn't know, they would think she was deliberately throwing herself into his arms. Then let's go in, it's getting late. Seeing Mengyo was a little embarrassed, Kinzu pretended to check the time and decisively changed the topic to avoid this girl from exploding again. When Mengyo nodded quietly, Kinzu closed the car door and led the way. With Mengyo, they once again returned to this old bar with a very stylish decoration. Pushing open the somewhat old wooden door of Twilight, Kinzu walked in first. At this moment, the bar is not open yet. In the empty hall, there are only a few waiters who are busy cleaning. Behind the slightly old bar, the old bartender with great beard is still wiping his cocktail shaker that can never be cleaned. Sir, we haven't opened yet. Seeing Kinzu and the other person push the door in, a black guy dressed as a waiter put down the broom in his hand, walked up quickly, and said very politely, "Hey, Whaley, let them come over. This is Keen from the Keen Manor, our god." Old Hank behind that bar heard the waiter's voice, raised his head, and saw Kinzu, so he smiled and shouted to the black guy named Whaley. "Hi, Hank, long time no see, how were you doing recently?" Hearing the old bartender's ridicule, Kinzu smiled and greeted him. "Very good, man, how do you have time to come today? It's not time to go out and have fun now." Nodding to Mengyo beside Kinzu, Old Hank teased Kinzu with a mischievous look on his face. "Thank you Fenxi for your reward support, and thank you for your monthly ticket support." "Thank you." Chapter 197 Not cheap beer. Oh, don't mention it. It's just a few guys in the manor. The manor is going to open a patient tonight, but they've identified your beer, Old Hank, so as a boss, I can only make a hard trip. Kinzu pretended to be helpless and sighed, and replied a little frustrated. "Ha, there's nothing I can do. Who told me that Old Hank's beer is the best in Revere?" Although he knew that Kinzu was joking, Old Hank still laughed happily. Good words, everyone likes to hear them. Taking Kinzu to the backyard of the bar, Old Hank took out an exquisite little pipe from his arms, lit it and took a deep puff, then walked a few steps forward, pointed to a yard of dark red wooden barrels, and said with a smile, "Clean, look, these are all my belongings, you can pick as much as you want." Looking at the large wine barrels in the yard that were more than 1 meter high, Kinzu turned around and discussed with Mengyo, then looked at Old Hank and said with a smile, "Well, let's take 5 barrels first. Anyway, we can store them in the cellar if we can't finish them." Old Hank had long eye circles, smiled and waved at Kinzu. No, Clean, you underestimate the few wine barrels in your manor. These wines are not enough for them to drink for 2 meals. He knew that there were more than a dozen big men in Kinzu's manor, and what cowboy doesn't drink? Not to mention that this is just beer, which is not very intoxicating. Even if it is red wine, it can't withstand the consumption of so many people. Kinzu and Mengyo looked at each other, and it seemed like this. After mumbling a few words, Kinzu finally decided to take 10 barrels at Mengyo's suggestion. So, the landlord Kin waved his hand and took 10 barrels first. Old Hank immediately smiled and signaled Kinzu to be patient. He extinguished his pipe and went to the front to greet a few waiters. Helped Kinzu to lift all these sealed barrels onto the pickup truck. When he finally paid the bill, Kinzu found that the beer was not cheap. Although old Hank still calculated the wholesale price for him, 10 barrels of wheat draft beer cost him more than $800. After converting it, Kinzu couldn't help but be amazed. It was almost $600 or $700 per barrel. But there was no way. Who made me not know how to brew wine? I could only let these foreign devils kill me. And old Hank's place is still good. If you go to the supermarket to buy the canned ones, you don't know how many cans you have to buy to drink for the guys on the ranch. After giving a $10 tip to the waiters who helped him, Kinzu helped Zumengyo get on the pickup truck. Although Zumengyo repeatedly asked to go to Revere and buy some clothes, Kinzu fooled her. It was so late, why buy clothes? I'll take you shopping when I have time. She gave him a helpless look and looked at the time. It was almost 5 o'clock, so Zumengyo had to follow his wishes. Facing the afterglow of the setting sun, the Ford Raptor sped along the deserted interstate highway. The empty interstate highway with no end in sight often makes travelers feel bored and lonely. But for Kinzu now, as long as he looked at the pretty figure next to him, he would not feel bored and lonely. The light gold and sunset shone on the slightly tough body of the Ford Raptor. The originally huge and sturdy body seemed to be covered with a layer of golden light, reflecting 1,000 feet of light. On both sides of the road, in the low bushes, and in the tender green pastures, a few curious and confused hareheads would occasionally appear. Their sensitive little ears would twitch from time to time as the sound gradually approached. Only when everything calmed down did they lower their heads and continue to nibble on the fresh grass in front of them. Hit the ground, hit the ground, hit the ground, oh oh, accompanied by the new song from the radio, which was sung by Taylor Swift, a new generation of American country music singer, for the soundtrack of the movie Chance to be Famous. Kinzu opened the window of the Ford pickup truck to the maximum, so that the breeze with the fragrance of pasture could cool down his gradually hot heart. Do you like her songs very much? Zumengyo, who was sitting in the passenger seat, asked curiously while listening to Taylor Swift's sweet voice on the radio. Kinzu came back to his senses from his empty state when he heard the pleasant voice coming from the side. After a moment of hesitation, he remembered what she asked. He shrugged casually and said with a smile, "It's okay, but in comparison, I still prefer Chinese songs." After saying that, looking at Zumengyo's thoughtful face, Kinzu asked back, "Why? Do you like her songs very much?" Zumengyo nodded gently and said with a smile, "Well, I like her quite a lot. I like the kind of strong and never give up spirit revealed in her songs." "Oh, then, I'll take you to meet her when I have time." Kinzu looked at Zumengyo, who had a calm face beside him, with a hint of uncertainty in his tone. "Hey, do you know her?" Hearing Kinzu's words, Zumengyo came back to her senses from her sigh and asked in surprise, I don't know her, but if I want to know her, it shouldn't be difficult." Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu slowly turned the Ford Raptor from the interstate highway to the small road on the ranch. Along the way, he drove carefully. He had just been complained by that girl, and he didn't want to do it again. Besides, drag racing is just once in a while. Not to mention that there is a truckload of beer behind, it is troublesome to be caught by the traffic police. Although he is not too afraid of trouble. Otherwise, he would not dare to drag race so hard just now. "Ha, I forgot, Mr. Clean, you are now a celebrity in New York and even in Europe and the United States." Zumengyo said with a little sarcasm after laughing softly. But what she said is indeed true. Kinzu is now the most popular. He is the youngest billionaire in the United States and the only Chinese director in Pingaloo's history. No matter which one is taken out, it is very important. In addition, he is single. Now in the United States, and even in the whole of Europe, there are countless unmarried girls who have set their sights on this diamond bachelor. Okay, don't laugh at me. If there is a chance, I will take you to meet her. Now, let's get off the car. After driving the pickup slowly to the door of the villa, Kinzu looked at Zumengyo with a mischievous smile on his face, blinked, and said something as if he was talking. Zumengyo's face, which was originally smiling triumphantly, suddenly collapsed, and she reluctantly got off the pickup truck with the help of Kinzu. She secretly swore in her heart that she would never ride in a pickup truck again. Thank you Fenxi for your reward and support. Thank you. Chapter 198. Riding a horse and shooting a gun. At this moment, John had already delivered all the seafood for today. Eva and Willan were chatting and preparing in the kitchen. Kinzu originally came here to ask a few guys to help him move beer, but he didn't see them after he came in and looked around. Looking at Lan who was helping in the kitchen, Kinzu asked curiously, "Sister Lan, where are the boss and the others?" "They are driving a pickup truck with John on the ranch." Lan smiled embarrassedly. These guys seemed to have never seen a car. It was just a pickup truck. What was there to do? Kinzu sweated a little and looked at the time. It was almost 2 hours since he went to Revere. These guys haven't come back yet? He took out his cell phone and called John. After a few rings, John finally picked up. "Hi, boss, are you back?" Before Kinzu could answer, he heard another angry and helpless voice from the other end of the phone. "Banlawa, you've been driving for more than half an hour, aren't you tired? It's my turn now." After a moment of shock, Kinzu quickly asked, "John, what's going on over there? What happened?" He recognized the voice of the fourth brother, Li Kaiang. "What happened?" "Oh, nothing, it's just that Wang has been driving and not letting Li drive." Li is a little anxious. John on the other end of the phone looked at Li Kaiang, who was looking at Wang Ming angrily, shrugged his shoulders, and said helplessly. Sweating for a while, Kinzu said helplessly, "Okay, you guys come back quickly, I've bought the beer, come and move it." John agreed and hung up the phone. After watching Wang Ming driving the Ford Raptor over a steep slope again, he smiled and said, "Guys, King called, we should go back." Slowly stopping the Ford Raptor, Wang Ming said reluctantly, "Why did this guy come back so early? I haven't driven it enough yet. This pickup truck is really good, and the off-road performance is great. It seems that I have to ask the old man to buy me one when I go back." Looking at Wang Ming, who was still chattering, Li Kaiang resisted the urge to beat him up, forced a smile and said, "Banlawa, Bang Fatty, second brother, is it my turn?" At this moment, Li Kaiang was already shouting in his heart. What was agreed upon? The boss drove over, Bang Xiao drove for a while, you drove for a while, and then I drove back. You're not going to get down after you start, right? After laughing twice, Bang Ming said a little embarrassedly, "Ahem, well, isn't it cheap to buy one? I'll buy one when I return home, and you can drive it whenever you want. Is that okay?" "Really?" Li Kaiang and Liang, who were watching the show, suddenly had their eyes brightened and asked in unison. "Really, it's better than real gold?" Bang Ming patted his chest and assured that they were all empty checks anyway, so he could write whatever he wanted. Li Kaiang and the other man looked at each other and nodded. Well, this fat guy is also a local tyrant, so this should be true. Now, the two of them looked at this guy in front of them, and they liked him more and more. It turned out that brothers are good. Sitting in the driver's seat that he had dreamed of for a long time, Li Kaiang sighed silently. When the few of them drove the pickup back to the villa, it was almost dark. In the sky, there were only colorful clouds, reflecting a brilliant red. Seeing several people getting off the car, Kinzu said helplessly, "What are you doing? Why did you take so long to come back?" He had already finished a glass of beer when these guys came back. "Ha, well, who told you that your car is so powerful? The off-road performance is really good. It is no worse than the highway when running on the dirt road." Bang Ming laughed and answered Kinzu first. I don't know what was wrong with him today. He was actually reluctant to get off the car. If this was leaked, he would lose face. Seeing the two people around him looking at him with contempt, Bang Ming felt wronged in his heart. It's really not my fault. It's just that, well, it's just the instinctive reaction of the body. He didn't want to get off. Waving his hand, Kinzu was not interested in finding out why. Since he was here, he should work. After several people moved the beer down, Bang Ming was already exhausted. Rubbing his old waist, Bang Ming had a miserable expression on his face, as if he had sprained his waist. "I say, third brother, how heavy is this bucket?" "Why is it so heavy?" "Not heavy, second brother, you should lose weight, really." Kinzu clapped his hands in a relaxed manner, looking at Bang Ming, who was covered in fat, and kindly reminded him. "Strange, that's not right, third brother, I remember you were about the same as me before." "What?" "After coming to the United States for a month, your body has become so healthy." Bang Ming felt unbalanced when he saw Kinzu, who had been moving beer for so long and still looked relaxed. He was talking while maintaining a low level of combat power, but he was secretly exercising. "Well, maybe I've been eating well recently. I eat either beef or mutton every day, which is too nutritious." Kinzu touched his chin and said with a thoughtful look. Bang Ming was confused when he heard it. "Is it really like this?" he asked in confusion. "Well, then, why do I eat like this every day, but I don't feel this way?" Glancing at him, Kinzu continued to play dumb and said, "Because I exercise every day, I either ride a horse or shoot a gun every day, which is very good for my body." "Riding a horse? Shooting a gun?" Now not only Wang Ling, but even Liang and Li Kaiyang who were watching the show on the side were not calm. After all, which man doesn't like to shoot a gun? Yeah, what's the matter, do you want to shoot a gun too? Qin Zhu continued to play dumb and asked, laughing secretly in his heart, and successfully changed the topic. I am so smart. Nonsense, of course I do. Wang Ling didn't need to answer this time. Several people shouted loudly in unison, and at the same time, in their hearts, they despised this guy fiercely. Is this simply asking knowingly? Hee, well, don't look at me like that, I'll take you there tomorrow. Seeing that he had caused public outrage, Qin Zhu was very sensible and quickly raised his hands to surrender. HMPH, you're smart. Seeing Qin Zhu giving, the men looked at each other and began to press him step by step. We'll shoot tomorrow. Okay, shoot. And ride horses. Okay, and ride horses. After signing an unequal treaties helplessly, Qin Zhu could finally breathe a sigh of relief. He squinted at Wang Ling and threatened, Second brother, hurry up and cook. It depends on your performance tonight. If you are not satisfied with the food, everything will be invalid. Why? What about them? Wang Ling looked at the men who were gloating on the side, with a depressed face. They are responsible for eating. Touching his chin, Qin Zhu looked as if it was natural. It was you who started today's incident. Thanks to Giant Ape Kaoyang for his reward support. Thanks to Zeb J3451694 for his 1000 starting coins reward. Thanks to Shift Book, Storm Ho, and Book Friend 508954448 for their monthly ticket support. Chapter 199 The performance of the little devilfish. While chatting and laughing, several people put all the beer in place. Anyway, they would drink it in the evening, so they did not move it to the warehouse. Looking at the people sitting on the blue stone steps at the door of the villa and chatting, John suddenly remembered something, so he walked over with a strange expression on his face and said to Qin Zhu, Boss, what should we do at the manta ray on the boat? Will said it was your pet. After being reminded by John, Qin Zhu remembered that he still had a baby on the boat. He slapped his head suddenly, wondering why he had forgotten about it. He quickly stood up from the smooth blue stone steps, said hello to the people, and hurried to the beach. Qin Zhu, wait for me. Looking at Qin Zhu rushing to the beach, Zhu Wenguo called out and trotted over with him. Wang Xiao, who was about to follow, turned his head and looked at the other people who were indifferent, and asked curiously, What's wrong? Aren't you going to help? Why don't you go? Are you really stupid or just pretending to be stupid? If you go now, Lao-san will definitely throw you into the sea to feed the fish. Rolling his eyes, Wang Ling looked at Wang Xiao, who looked like a fool, with contempt. Now he finally understood why he couldn't take Lin Yu after so long. It was because his emotional intelligence was too low. After being stunned for a moment, Wang Xiao looked at the two people who were walking away together, and seemed to understand something. He smiled awkwardly and sat down again in a sullen manner. Why are you running so fast? Why don't you wait for me? After jogging to catch up with Qin Zhu, Zhu Wenguo scolded him helplessly. Qin Zhu was stunned when he heard the words, and came back to his senses. He turned his head and looked at Zhu Wenguo, whose face was slightly red because of running, and said with a smile, I am too impatient. It's been so long, don't let the little guy get hungry. By the way, why are you here? As soon as the voice fell, Qin Zhu felt that something was wrong, and quickly added, Oh, I mean, don't you need help in the kitchen? As soon as he said this, Qin Zhu wanted to slap himself a few times. What happened today? Was this what he said? Could it be that he had been with Wang Xiao for a long time, and his emotional intelligence was also infected by him? Looking at Qin Zhu, who looked a little embarrassed, Zhu Wenguo laughed out loud, and Qin Zhu laughed so hard that he almost found a place to hide. Only when Qin Zhu's face turned red from laughing did Zhu Wenguo stop her bell-like laughter and ask breathlessly, Oh, by the way, Qin Zhu, where are you going to put the manta ray? I heard from John that it was your pet. Seeing that the girl opposite finally stopped laughing, Qin Zhu breathed a sigh of relief. Hearing her question, he quickly replied, Yes, it's a little guy we just adopted. We plan to put it in the fishery. It won't run away. Are you sure it won't run away? Manta ray won't stay in one place obediently, right? Stepping on the white and soft beach, Zhu Wenguo turned her head and looked at Qin Zhu curiously. Do you really think the things that are in your fishery are yours? Qin Zhu heard this, and a proud arc appeared on the corner of his mouth. He looked at Zhu Wenguo mysteriously and said, Wenguo, you don't know this. Unless I don't want the things in my fishery, they are mine. TSK, you're bragging. I want to see how you can make it obedient. Zumengyo curled her lips and looked at the guy, pretending to be mysterious with disdain. Do you really think this girl is so easy to fool? Ha ha, you'll know in a while. After laughing proudly twice, Kinzu took her to the dock and greeted Will, who was still busy. Hey, Will, how is it? Are you packed? Boss, everything is packed. All the catches have been moved to the cold storage in the manor for storage. Are you going to sell it? Will stopped the work in his hands and asked subconsciously. Although he had guessed the answer when Kinzu asked them to move the catches to the warehouse instead of going directly to the fishing port. Sure enough, Kinzu did not stop and took Zumengyo directly to the deck in No. 1, leaving only one sentence in the distance. If you don't sell it, why sell it? The first catch will be divided among everyone tomorrow, and it will be considered the official opening of our manor. After getting on the boat, Zumengyo looked around and made sure that there was no one. Then she looked at Kinzu helplessly and said, You really don't plan to sell it? That's a lot of money. The tone and expression were just short of directly pointing at his nose and calling him a prodigal. Looking at Zumengyo's distressed expression, Kinzu almost couldn't help laughing out loud. Why didn't he realize that this girl had such a thrifty side before? Mengyo, you have to know that I just got here and the employees are all new. The first thing I have to do is not to make money, but to appease them. When there is a stable rear, then it is time to consider making money. After saying that, looking at Zumengyo's half-understanding look, Kinzu smiled and added, And I'm not short of money, am I? The most important thing is that this is a no-cost business. The fish are raised by the previous fish farm owner and they caught them themselves. I don't feel bad at all to send them out as a favor. After saying that, Kinzu shrugged his shoulders complacently, looking like he deserved a beating. I see, okay. Rolling her eyes at this guy, Zumengyo agreed reluctantly. Although it was not her own fish, she still felt a little distressed to see that it was so cheap for the foreigner. However, when Kinzu brought her to the seawater cabin, looking at the little guy swimming happily in the seawater pool, Zumengyo immediately threw the matter of sending fish out of her mind. With a curious look on his face, he looked at the small manta ray that was spinning and swimming down in the seawater pool, and asked curiously, Kinzu, what is it doing? Before he finished speaking, he saw the silver-white manta ray that was spinning and swimming down suddenly turned around from the seawater, quickly rushed up from the bottom of the seawater, and jumped out of the seawater in front of Zumengyo's stunned expression. Bang! Splash! After a dull sound of breaking through the air, the seawater pool suddenly splashed. After the silver-white manta ray glided more than 1 meter in the air, it fell back into the seawater pool that was already splashing, and immediately set off a higher wave. This, pointing at the silver-white manta ray swimming happily in front of the two, Zumengyo, who saw this kind of live performance for the first time, was speechless for a moment, not knowing what to say. Chapter 200a. Small bet. Haha, what's wrong? Are you scared? This is the favorite game of manta rays when they have nothing to do. After explaining to Zumengyo with a smile, Kinzu reached his hand into the seawater pool and gently stroked the little guy who had a spiritual connection with him. I know, but this is the first time I've seen it with my own eyes, and at such a close distance. Gently patting the rather large and plump, Zumengyo looked at the little guy who was extremely docile in Kinzu's hands with a frightened expression. How is it? Do you think it's possible for me to adopt it now? Kinzu turned around, but found that Zumengyo's little hand quickly took it away from the plump place. After staring at it fiercely, Kinzu couldn't help but feel a pity in his heart. If he had known earlier, he would have turned back to take a look earlier. Being stared at by Kinzu's eyes, Zumengyo couldn't help but twist her body, glared at this guy fiercely, and then answered. It looks very honest now, but it may not be the case in the sea. The ocean is so big, how can you find it then? Although Zumengyo had some understanding of the docility of this little devilfish. But she still didn't believe that it would be so obedient after being put into the sea. Then how about we make a bet? Kinzu's sly smile made Zumengyo shiver unconsciously. This guy has too many bad ideas. However, after hearing his words, she couldn't help but ask, what bet? So, if I put this little guy back into the sea and it is still so obedient, you can kiss me, how about it? Kinzu looked at her delicate and tender red lips with ill intentions and made a suggestion that made Zumengyo blush. No, change one. How about I kiss you? You're helpless. I don't want to bet. Zumengyo gave this bad guy a fierce look and simply rejected the bet. Oh, it seems that you still don't have confidence in yourself. Kinzu raised his eyebrows proudly, and he was not disappointed at all because of Zumengyo's rejection. Instead, he calmly used the method of provoking her. Isn't there an old saying? It's better to provoke than to please. Okay, I promise you, you go and release it quickly. Let's make a deal first, just put it back directly, and don't use any tricks. Although she knew that this guy was using the method of provocation, the strong Zumengyo still gritted her teeth and agreed. She really didn't believe that she could find a fish after putting it into the vast ocean. Unfortunately, she obviously forgot the performance of the small animals in the ranch. Kinzu laughed triumphantly a few times, and under Zumengyo's nervous urging, he found a large basin, filled it with seawater from the seawater pool, and then took the little guy out and put it in. The little guy was a little nervous when he changed to a new environment. In the small basin, he kept twisting his silver-white body. Don't be afraid, little guy, the master will wait for you to return to the sea, that's where you should be. Looking at the nervous little manta ray, Kinzu gently comforted it a few times. Do you really think it can understand what you say? Looking at Kinzu, who was seriously comforting the little manta ray, Zumengyo next to him said helplessly. Do you really expect a fish to understand what you say? However, what surprised her was that the little manta ray, which was twisting its silver-white body in panic, really calmed down slowly under Kinzu's comfort. Coincidence? Yes, it must be a coincidence. Rubbing her eyes and looking at Kinzu in surprise, Zumengyo kept muttering that it was a coincidence. She still couldn't believe that a fish could understand human words. Ignoring Zumengyo's constant chattering, Kinzu effortlessly carried a large wooden basin with a diameter of about 1 meter and walked straight to the bottom of the boat. Hey, Kinzu, where are you going? Zumengyo, who got off the boat with Kinzu, looked at Kinzu walking outside the dock and asked curiously. He raised his head and gestured outside. After nodding with Simon and others who were busy packing things at the dock, Kinzu continued to walk outside the dock with the large basin. Miss, can't we just stay at the dock? There are so many people there, what if the little guy is scared? It was not until they reached the outside of the dock that Kinzu turned around and explained to Zumengyo beside him. But what he didn't say was that he was mainly afraid that all would look at him with that fanatical gaze again, which would give him goosebumps. After walking for a while, Kinzu stopped at a beach with some small reefs with Zumengyo. He looked up and looked around. In addition to the endless sea and sky, there was the lush green pasture forest. Kinzu nodded with satisfaction. Well, that's it. No one will be able to see it when he collects the reward. If Zumengyo knew that Kinzu walked so far mainly because he was afraid that she would cheat when there were too many people, she would not know if she would kick this guy directly. However, now she did not have the consciousness that Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf were together. She was still looking at Kinzu with great interest, the wooden basin in Kinzu's hand. Hurry up, why are you dithering? She urged him impatiently. Now she was looking forward to seeing Kinzu's frustrated expression. She had already thought about it. She must give this guy a good look and let him show off. Looking at the impatient Zumengyo, Kinzu's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a weird smile. Little lamb, since you are so proactive, don't blame me for being rude. So, Kinzu took a few quick steps and came to a reef on the seashore, and gently put the wooden basin directly into the shallow seawater. Although the seawater on the shore was a little shallow, it was about 1 meter deep. After the wooden basin slowly sank completely into the seawater, the silver-white little manta ray moved gently in Zumengyo's face full of expectation. First, it shook its body to adapt to the new water temperature. After it was fully adapted, the little manta ray gently waved its pair of silver-white flesh wings, left the big wooden basin where it had just stayed for a while, and returned to the familiar ocean. Gently shaking the tiny tail, the little guy slowly turned around Kinzu's big hand, and in Zumengyo's almost desperate eyes, he turned around and swam towards the depths of the ocean. With a deep sigh of relief, Zumengyo stroked her little heart that was about to jump out, and scolded the little guy in her heart, just go if you want to go, and you were acting like a mermaid, you were almost driving me crazy. Thanks to Anson Chen, Fengxiai, and Xiaowei Holingzi for their rewards and support, thank you. Fin DS caption much as great as Pelaga Hasta El Final. No SE indeed I'll like Busgasms content to exclusive YXO in Medito. Siascravata News Patreon. Rukurada, card alike, Siascripsino Donakin knows anima continue. Great as a Todos nos vemos on Alpsmovdo.